At the very beginning, the heavens and the earth were created by God, a single, straightforward sentence that sets the entire Bible into motion. But have you ever wondered if there might be more to this account? Could there be an ancient manuscript that supplies all the missing details that Genesis doesn't include? Right now, we're going to explore in depth the Book of Jubilees, that concealed origin narrative which reveals how heaven was structured, the moment angels came into being, and what universal happenings molded our reality before Adam ever drew his initial breath. Before we dive in, though, if content like this soothes your evening hours, please think about liking and subscribing so we can stay in touch. We're also curious to know your location and when you're watching this. So, with no more delay, shall we get started? The manuscript that has no business existing, deep in the Qumran caves, close to the Dead Sea, buried in complete darkness for almost 2,000 years, there lay a mystery. A manuscript concealed from humanity until the mid-20th century arrived. This manuscript recounts a narrative you might believe you're familiar with, yet it contains particulars that will catch you off guard. This represents the Book of Jubilees, the Bible's hidden counterpart. Picture discovering a manuscript that retells the opening chapters of Genesis, claiming to predate the Bible itself. A manuscript in which angels observe your every action, where time moves in rigid 7-year patterns, and where the calendar of heaven controls all existence on our planet. This isn't made-up fiction. This is what Jubilees offers. The Dead Sea Scrolls returned this forgotten manuscript to us, one that had disappeared from Western awareness for more than 1,500 years. Ethiopian Christians preserved it as holy scripture, while the remainder of the world had almost completely forgotten its existence. Now, we have access to read it once more, and what we discover is simultaneously peculiar and magnificent. Turn to the pages of Jubilees, and you step into a reality where angels relay sacred history to Moses atop Mount Sinai. A reality where the patriarch Enoch gains astronomical knowledge from celestial beings. A reality where demons possess names and specific roles, where the universe operates on divine mechanics, and where human liberty exists inside narrow confines. So who penned this enigmatic manuscript? Academic scholars situate its composition around the 2nd century before the Common Era, during an era when Jewish identity faced danger from Greek culture. The writer, whose identity will remain forever unknown, asserted something audacious, that his manuscript held information more ancient and more genuine than the Torah itself. Why did Jubilees vanish from the majority of religious traditions? The explanation rests partially in its inflexible perspectives. Jubilees allows minimal space for modification or development. Its calendar remains permanently locked at 364 days, precisely 52 weeks, without leap years or modifications. Its regulations are everlasting and unalterable. For expanding religious movements requiring adaptation to fresh eras and locations, such inflexibility turned into an obstacle. The majority of Christian denominations turned away from Jubilees during the formation of their Bible. Jewish religious teachers likewise excluded it from their scriptural canon. Solely in Ethiopia did it endure as scripture, read together with Genesis and Exodus as heavenly truth. For everyone else, it transformed into an interesting footnote, a road not traveled. Yet this book refuses to remain hidden. The concepts within Jubilees influenced the thinking of the Essenes, that wilderness community responsible for hiding the Dead Sea Scrolls. Its ideas resonate in early Christian literature. Its angels and demons surface in folklore throughout the Middle East. And now, in our current age, it speaks once more. A voice emerging from an ancient civilization with a remarkably different understanding of reality. This represents a journey into a manuscript that reimagines the start of time itself. A book whispering of angels, maintaining universal records of a world where even your tiniest deeds have been inscribed in heaven's ledgers. A book that shouldn't have survived, but did. The Bible's removed prequel. The Book of Jubilees formerly occupied a position of profound reverence among numerous faith communities. In ancient Ethiopia, it continues to be regarded as holy scripture, included in their Bible, recited in churches, examined by priests. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, additional copies of Jubilees were discovered than nearly any other manuscript, apart from the Hebrew Bible itself. This wasn't some insignificant work. For certain communities, it was indispensable reading. Early Christians were well acquainted with this book. Church leaders cited from it, argued about it, and occasionally cherished it. In Ethiopia, they never ceased viewing it as divinely inspired. There, they refer to it as the Little Genesis, a supplement to the initial Book of Moses, completing particulars the Bible omitted. So, what's the reason most Bibles exclude it? The explanation brings us to the core of how sacred books get selected. As Judaism developed following the temple's destruction, religious teachers searched for manuscripts that could bring together their dispersed people. Jubilees, with its rigid solar calendar that contrasted with the lunar one most Jews observed, became divisive instead of unifying. Its unbending rules appeared to allow insufficient space for rabbinical interpretation. For Christians constructing their emerging faith, Jubilees introduced different complications. Its elaborate laws could potentially confuse new believers who were instructed that Christ completed the Old Covenant. Its dramatic depiction of angels performing God's work on earth appeared to allow less space for Christ's distinctive role. Gradually, in most locations, it shifted from scripture to intriguing ancient manuscript. But what distinguishes Jubilees so dramatically? First, there's its understanding of time itself. The book separates all history into exact units. Jubilee periods spanning 49 years, composed of 7 weeks of 7 years apiece. Every occurrence in history possesses its designated time, inscribed in heaven long before it transpires on earth. Then we have the heavenly tablets, universal records maintained by angels, holding not only the past but the future as well. In Jubilees, nothing occurs by chance. Every birth, every death, every conflict and peace agreement happens in accordance with a divine schedule established at creation. Most remarkable is how Jubilees reimagines Genesis. It supplements conversations, inserts scenes, and clarifies motivations. When Adam and Eve experience their fall, Jubilees informs us which animals forfeited speech as punishment. When Cain murders Abel, Jubilees provides the names of their sisters who became their wives. The recognizable stories acquire fresh depth, fresh detail, and occasionally fresh interpretations. Angels assume a significantly larger role than in Genesis. They're present at creation. They instruct humans in skills and knowledge. They execute punishments, and they document all human actions. One angel, never identified, but frequently referred to as the Angel of the Presence, narrates the majority of the book, addressing Moses directly. And there's Mastema, a figure remarkably similar to Satan, but possessing official responsibilities in God's court. He tests humans, presents accusations against them, and commands spirits who create trouble. Yet he performs this with God's authorization, within rigid boundaries. Evil in Jubilees serves heaven's larger plan. The book introduces itself not as some fresh revelation, but as the most ancient truth, knowledge delivered to Moses together with the Torah, then forgotten for ages until recovered through this manuscript. It asserts to be more ancient and more genuine than Genesis itself. This audacious assertion helped it acquire followers, but ultimately caused most faith leaders to maintain it at a distance. Yet reading Jubilees provides a window into how certain ancient people comprehended their world, a universe of flawless order, where even the stars and planets travel paths established by God, where human freedom exists, but inside a grand design already finished in heaven. A world where time itself possesses meaning, structure, and divine intention. Moses on Mount Sinai, once more. The Book of Jubilees commences not with creation, but with Moses ascending Mount Sinai to receive God's law. You might believe you know this account from Exodus, but Jubilees reveals to us something fresh occurred on that mountain. While Moses remained in the cloud-shrouded peaks, the angel of the presence approached him with an assignment: to record what no human had previously heard. "Pay attention to everything I shall reveal to you on this mountain," the angel declares to Moses, "and inscribe it in a book, so that your descendants might understand I have not forsaken them." What emerges is not merely the law, but a recounting of all history, from creation until that precise moment on the mountain. The angel clarifies that he is reading from the heavenly tablets, God's universal records, where all occurrences past and future are inscribed. Through this angel, Moses discovers the authentic structure of time itself. Not the disorganized lunar months that wander through the seasons, but God's flawless calendar of exactly 364 days. This divine calendar divides the year into 4 seasons of 91 days each, exactly 13 weeks per season. Every year contains 52 complete weeks. Days perpetually land on the identical date every year. Festivals never shift or relocate. It is flawless, unchanging, and according to Jubilees, the sole calendar God acknowledges for marking holy days. "Observe the days and the months and the seasons," the angel instructs Moses. "If they alter this order, they will disturb their seasons, and the years will be displaced, and they will observe neither the festivals nor the Sabbaths in their appropriate time." Here we encounter one of Jubilee's most remarkable assertions, that employing the incorrect calendar is not merely a minor mistake, but a universal sin that disrupts divine order. Those who observe lunar months or other human calendars sever their connection with heaven's timing. Their prayers and festivals carry no meaning, for they occur on the incorrect days. This may appear peculiar to modern sensibilities, but for the writer of Jubilees, time itself represented a battlefield. Jewish communities following the Babylonian exile encountered pressure to embrace foreign methods of marking time. The author probably perceived this as a danger to their very identity as God's people. By asserting a divine origin for their solar calendar, they resisted against these pressures. The angel clarifies to Moses that time itself commenced with creation, organized in Jubilee cycles, 49-year periods composed of 7 sabbatical cycles. Each occurrence in history falls inside this meticulous structure. Events are comparable to notes in a magnificent song composed by God before the world commenced. But there's more transpiring on that mountain than merely a history lesson. The angel discloses to Moses that heaven and earth are secured in a universal struggle. Forces of light and darkness fight for human souls. Angels of heaven maintain watch over the righteous, while Mastema and his spirits entice humans to deviate from God's flawless order. "Record all these words which I proclaim to you today," the angel instructs Moses, "for I know their rebellion and their stubbornness." The angel perceives ahead to times when people will forget the authentic calendar, will intermingle with foreign nations, will violate God's laws. This book is intended as a solution, a path back to heaven's flawless order. So Moses remains on the mountain for 40 days and nights, recording everything the angel communicates, the authentic story of the world, the genuine laws of God, the flawless timing of all things. And when he comes down, he transports not merely the stone tablets, but this book as well, Jubilees, the record of time itself. In this universal vision, human freedom continues to exist, but inside boundaries established long ago. We select our paths, but the form of history follows patterns inscribed in heaven before the initial day appeared. Time is not merely passing moments, but a sacred structure, and existing in harmony with it means observing God's authentic calendar disclosed again through Moses on the mountain. Creation reimagined. At the very beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So commences Genesis, with God alone producing light from darkness. But Jubilees presents us a different scene. A universe already occupied with angels observing as God fashions the world. This isn't a silent, empty void. Heaven's courts are abundant with witnesses to earth's birth. The angel informs Moses, "On the initial day, God created the heavens above, and the earth and the waters, and all the spirits who serve in his presence. The angels of the presence, the angels of holiness, the angels of the spirits of fire, the angels of the spirits of wind, the angels of the spirits of the clouds of darkness, of snow, of hail, of frost, the angels of sound and thunder and lightning, the angels of the spirits of cold and heat. Creation develops over 6 days, as Genesis recounts to us, but with angels documenting each divine act, recording it in heaven's books. God isn't merely constructing a world. He's founding a universal order with numerous layers, positioning angels over each element of nature, establishing a heavenly administration to sustain his creation. On day 1, God creates not merely light, but the angels themselves, arranged in rigid ranks and roles. Some stand in front of God's throne singing praises, others function as messengers. Still, others supervise natural forces, wind, rain, seasons, and stars. When the waters separate on day 2, angels are designated to oversee them. When land emerges on day 3, additional angels assume their positions. For every aspect of creation, heaven supplies supervisors, guardians, and record keepers. Nothing transpires by accident or without supervision. On the 4th day, when God fashions the sun, moon, and stars, Jubilees adds something essential: the establishment of God's flawless calendar. The sun's journey through the sky marks not merely days, but a divine timetable exactly 364 days long. This calendar becomes fundamental to the book's message, a heavenly clock that humans must observe. He fashioned the sun, a magnificent sign above the earth, for days, Sabbaths, months, feast years, jubilees, and for all seasons, the angel clarifies. Every unit of time possesses meaning in God's plan. To disregard this calendar is to step outside divine order itself. Animals emerge on days 5 and 6, just as Genesis recounts to us, but Jubilees adds that 22 types of creatures were fashioned, a number that corresponds with the letters in the Hebrew alphabet, implying that creation itself is organized like sacred language. Then arrives humanity, Adam fashioned from earth, given life by God's breath. But Jubilees presents us the angels' reaction. Some celebrate at this fresh being, while others develop concerned. These worries foreshadow troubles to arrive, as some angels will ultimately resent humans and pursue their downfall. Eve's creation arrives with fresh details as well. The angel informs Moses she wasn't fashioned on the 6th day with Adam, but afterward, after Adam had been transported into Eden. This timing difference might appear minor, but it influences how Jubilees perceives gender roles and human relationships. When God rests on the 7th day, Jubilees emphasizes this wasn't merely a pause, but the creation of something fresh, the Sabbath itself, the crown of the week. The angel informs Moses that only 2 groups were permitted to honor this day: the angels in heaven and the Israelites on earth. All other nations were refused this privilege. In this retelling, Adam and Eve aren't quite the independent beings we recognize from Genesis. They're more comparable to actors in a universal drama observed by angels, their choices documented in heaven's books, their future already inscribed in tablets above. They possess free will, but they exercise it inside boundaries established before they drew their initial breath. God positions the first humans in Eden not merely to tend a garden, but to burn incense and present offerings, transforming Eden not merely into a paradise, but the first temple. From their very first day, humans were intended to worship, to acknowledge the Creator and the order He founded in those initial 6 days. By the time Jubilees completes its creation story, we perceive a world more intricate than Genesis presents us. A universe layered with angels, governed by exact timing, moving in accordance with patterns established at the beginning. Humans stand at the center of this magnificent design, precious to God, but also small inside a vast heavenly system that observes, records, and occasionally intervenes in earthly matters. The fall, as told by the angels. When we arrive at the story of temptation in Eden, Jubilees transports us deeper than Genesis does. The recognizable serpent emerges, but behind this creature stands a darker power. Mastema, Prince of Spirits, heaven's prosecutor. The angel clarifies to Moses that the serpent was merely a tool employed by spiritual forces that resented Adam and Eve's position in creation. The serpent approached and drew near to the woman. The angel informs Moses, and the serpent declared to the woman, "Has God genuinely said, 'You shall not eat from any tree in the garden'?" But unlike Genesis, Jubilees presents us this wasn't merely curiosity or mischief. It was part of a universal trial. Would humans remain faithful to heaven's order? Eve's response travels the recognizable path, taking the fruit, consuming it, sharing with Adam. But Jubilees perceives this as more than disobedience, it's contamination. By taking what wasn't provided, the first humans shattered the boundaries between holy and common things. Their nakedness suddenly visible to them isn't merely shame, it's the loss of glory. On that day, their mouths were opened, and they commenced to speak, the angel declares, and they perceived that they were naked. This fresh awareness arrives as a fall from innocence, but also as a kind of dark awakening. They now comprehend both good and evil. But this knowledge produces pain instead of wisdom. God's arrival in the garden arrives with thunder and earthquake in Jubilees' recounting. Divine judgment isn't quiet, but terrifying. The whole garden trembles as God announces his verdict, first on the serpent, then on Eve, then on Adam. Each receives punishment suited to their role in this universal breach. What transpires next differs subtly from Genesis. God doesn't fashion garments of animal skins for the fallen humans. Instead, the angel informs Moses, "The Lord God fashioned for Adam and his wife garments of skin and clothed them." Some ancient readers comprehended this to signify Adam and Eve initially wore garments of light, spiritual bodies, now replaced with mortal flesh that would one day perish. Their expulsion from Eden follows, but Jubilees adds a timeline absent from Genesis. In the first week of the first Jubilee, Adam and his wife were in the Garden of Eden for 7 years, tilling and keeping it. So the first humans spent exactly 7 years in paradise, 1 week of years before their fall. As they depart Eden, Jubilees informs us Adam transported 2 things: incense from the garden so he could still present proper worship outside paradise, and seeds of garden plants to cultivate food in his exile. Both demonstrate that despite their fall, humans retain connections to their original purpose, to worship God and to tend the earth. The angel clarifies to Moses that Adam and Eve didn't merely lose a garden, they lost direct contact with holiness. Therefore, the tablets of heaven were commanded regarding them that they should be separated from all defilement. Sin created a barrier between earth and heaven, between humans and divine presence. Outside Eden, the first couple begin to work the land. Adam tills the soil, while Eve discovers to fashion clothing. They acquire skills they never required in paradise: agriculture, weaving, cooking with fire. They have children, first Cain with his sister Awan, then Abel with his sister Azura. Jubilees carefully documents these details, completing gaps Genesis leaves open. When Adam and Eve have Seth to replace murdered Abel, Jubilees dates this exactly, after 5 weeks in the 4th year of the 5th week of the first Jubilee. This exact dating isn't merely trivia, it's fundamental to the book's message. Every occurrence happens at its designated time, inscribed in heaven's records before the world commenced. Time itself has transformed after Eden. Now, humans exist inside rigid measurements: days, weeks, months, years, and jubilees. The first Jubilee, 49 years, marks the transition from paradise to the world of work, pain, and death. The universal clock has started its count, measuring down through history toward ultimate judgment and restoration. The angel informs Moses that Adam and Eve mourned for their lost garden, presenting fragrant plants as gifts to God, pursuing forgiveness. And God does not forsake them. Even as they commence their exile, divine mercy accompanies them. Angels instruct them skills they require to survive. The sun and stars continue to observe heaven's timetable, providing them the rhythm of days and seasons. So commences human history outside Eden, a story of loss, but also of structure and purpose. The world continues to operate on divine time. Angels continue to observe and record human deeds. And though paradise is lost, Jubilees informs us the path back remains accessible to those who honor heaven's calendar and observe God's eternal law. Cain, Abel, and the initial civil conflict. Following Eden, life continued. Adam and Eve had children, and the human story commenced to develop. The Book of Jubilees informs us that in the first week of the second Jubilee, a son named Cain was born. His brother Abel arrived 7 years afterward. The brothers matured, learning the ways of the earth. Abel tended sheep, while Cain worked the soil. They existed in rhythm with the land, but peace wouldn't endure between them. When it arrived, time to present offerings to God, Abel transported the firstborn of his flock. Cain collected fruits from his harvest. The smoke from Abel's sacrifice ascended straight to heaven. Cain's offering drifted sideways, turned away. Jubilees provides us timing that Genesis omits. The brothers were adults. Cain was 22 and Abel 20. The first murder wasn't a sudden explosion of rage, but a festering wound. "Let's walk in the field," Cain declared to his brother. Away from watchful eyes, Cain struck Abel down. Blood soaked into the ground that had just turned away Cain's offering. The earth transformed into both witness and evidence. God's voice shattered the silence. "Where is Abel, your brother? Am I my brother's keeper?" Cain responded, but God knew. The blood had already spoken from the ground. Unlike Genesis, Jubilees tracks Cain's punishment with careful dates. His exile commenced that very year, the timing recorded in heaven's ledger. God marked Cain so no one would eliminate him, a mixture of curse and strange protection. East of Eden, Cain constructed the first city. He named it after his son Enoch, not the Skywalker we'll encounter later, but a different Enoch. This city building holds dark significance in Jubilees. It wasn't merely shelter, but the first indication of humans fashioning their own kingdoms apart from heaven's plan. 4 generations down from Cain arrived Lamech, who eliminated a man and a boy. Evil expanded like a weed in fertile soil. The bloodshed that commenced with brothers spread into the first clans and tribes. The first civil conflict of humanity. Back in Adam's house, a fresh son was born, Seth. Through him would arrive a different line, one that might remember heaven's calendar. But the damage was done. Death had entered the world, and time's arrow now pointed toward decay. Jubilees presents us that Cain's crime wasn't merely murder, it was the first breach in God's flawless timeline. From this point forward, earthly occurrences would struggle to match heaven's script. The magnificent clock commenced to drift. Adam and Eve mourned Abel for 4 Jubilees, nearly 200 years. Time itself transformed into a measure of grief. And in their tears, we perceive the first humans learning that actions resonate across generations. The ground that absorbed Abel's blood would never yield the identical harvest again. The first city constructed by Cain would never know genuine peace. The pattern was established. Brother against brother, the soil and the shepherd at odds. In Jubilees, this isn't merely family drama, it's universal disruption. The angels observing from above documented each date, each crime, each consequence. Nothing was random. Everything fit into heaven's timetable, even the first murder. And so commenced humanity's long walk away from Eden, a path marked by violence, but still under heaven's watchful gaze. The calendar kept turning, the Jubilees counted onward. The angels recorded it all. Enoch, the walker of skies. In the 7th generation from Adam arrived a man unlike any other. His name was Enoch, and Jubilees recounts his story with special care. Born in the 6th week of the 7th Jubilee, Enoch's life was mapped by sacred numbers from the start. Genesis provides Enoch just a few lines. Jubilees expands his story into something wondrous. He wasn't merely a good man who walked with God. He was the first human to crack heaven's code. At age 12, Enoch commenced to fear God. By 65, he had acquired the rhythms of sun, moon, and stars. The angels themselves instructed him to track time's pulse across the sky. He wasn't merely observing the heavens, he was reading them like text. Jubilees discloses what Genesis only hints at. Enoch was the first astronomer priest. 6 Jubilees after creation, humans finally possessed someone who could read God's celestial calendar correctly. The stars turned overhead, and Enoch knew their names. The seasons transformed, and he marked their proper times. He was the first among men to acquire writing and knowledge and wisdom, Jubilees informs us. Before him time flowed without human witness. After him the days possessed a keeper. For 300 years Enoch walked among his people, instructing them heaven's patterns. He inscribed it all down, the first sacred manuscripts. His scrolls tracked angels, demons, heavenly bodies, and divine laws. He transformed into a bridge between worlds. The Book of Jubilees provides us something Genesis doesn't, the reason for Enoch's special role. He stood against fallen angels who had instructed humans forbidden knowledge. While others acquired warcraft and vanity, Enoch instructed truth and time. In his 365th year, matching the days of the solar year, Enoch didn't perish. He was taken. Jubilees declares the earth released him to the sky he had studied so faithfully. He had walked with angels in understanding, and now he would walk with them in person. Jubilees informs us the angels transported Enoch to the Garden of Eden, where he now records the deeds of humanity. He transformed into heaven's scribe, documenting each sin and virtue. The man who tracked time transformed into timeless himself. Before he departed earth, Enoch warned his son Methuselah about approaching judgment. The waters would ascend, the world would cleanse, a fresh start would arrive. Even this flood possessed its designated time in heaven's ledger. In Enoch, we perceive Jubilee's ideal human, one who keeps the right calendar, observes heaven's law, and functions as witness to divine order. He is both scientist and mystic, tracking stars while speaking with angels. What makes Jubilee's portrait of Enoch so remarkable isn't merely his heavenly ascent, it's that he mastered time itself. In a book obsessed with exact dates and sacred periods, Enoch stands as the human who got it right. He aligned Earth's rhythms with heaven's pulse. Through Enoch, humans received the authentic calendar. 364 days divided flawlessly. Not the disorganized lunar months that drift and require correction. Not the pagan timekeeping that served false gods. The pure solar year divided in 4 equal parts. And because he kept authentic time, Enoch escaped time's greatest curse, death. He stepped from the flowing river of days into the timeless realm where angels dwell. The walker of skies transformed into the sky dweller. After Enoch departed, his knowledge commenced to fade from earth. People forgot the authentic calendar. They missed festival dates. They planted at incorrect times. The gap between heaven and earth expanded wider with each passing Jubilee. But Enoch observes still, according to Jubilees. From Eden's garden he records our story. The first timekeeper keeps time for us all. The flood approaches. 10 generations from Adam, the world had lost its way. Jubilees informs us that by Noah's time, the earth commenced to be filled with corruption and wickedness. The careful timeline God had established was now in chaos. Unlike Genesis, Jubilees clarifies exactly why the flood arrived. Yes, humans had grown wicked, but something worse had transpired. Angels called Watchers had departed their posts in heaven and taken human wives. Their children were giants who devoured the sons of men. These fallen angels instructed humans arts that heaven hadn't planned to share yet: metalwork, makeup, spells, star reading for incorrect purposes. Knowledge arrived too soon, without wisdom to guide it. The divine timetable was shattered. Noah stood alone in this shattered world. Jubilees calls him righteous in all his ways, a rare light in growing darkness. When he was 500 years old, exactly when heaven's tablets had inscribed it, God spoke to him about the approaching waters. Jubilees adds a chilling detail absent from Genesis. While Noah constructed the ark, Demons commanded by Mastema, Jubilees' name for Satan, worked harder than ever to corrupt humanity. They knew their time was limited. The earth would soon be washed clean of their influence. The ark wasn't merely a boat. It was a floating temple constructed to heaven's exact measurements, 3 floors, exact dimensions, a single door, nothing random. Every cubit matched the divine blueprint. In a world where everything had gone incorrect, the ark stood as something exactly right. Noah collected animals by sevens and pairs, depending on whether they were clean for sacrifice. Jubilees is careful to document which ones could be consumed and which couldn't. Even in crisis, the dietary laws mattered. God's order applied in all circumstances. On the 17th day of the 2nd month, in the 600th year of Noah's life, the waters arrived. Rain from above, floods from below. Heaven and earth conspired to wash away corruption. For 40 days, water covered everything. Jubilees tracks the flood's timeline with precision that Genesis doesn't match. The waters ascended for 40 days. They remained at their height for 150 days. They commenced to lower on the 1st day of the 10th month. The tops of mountains emerged on the 1st month of Noah's 601st year. This isn't merely storytelling detail for Jubilees. These dates matter profoundly. The flood wasn't random punishment. It was scheduled cleansing, marked on heaven's calendar long before the first raindrop fell. Inside the ark, a remnant of life waited. 8 humans, pairs of animals, seeds and plants, not selected by chance but chosen as living vessels of renewal. When everything corrupt was gone, they would rebuild the world. After exactly 1 year, Noah opened the ark. The ground had dried. A fresh world waited. But something had transformed in heaven as well. Jubilees informs us that after the flood, most of the fallen angels were bound in judgment. Their leader, Mastema, pleaded with God to keep some demons free, and strangely, God agreed. "Let 1/10 of them remain in my presence," God declared in Jubilees, "and let 9/10 descend to the place of judgment." Evil would continue, but limited, contained on a divine leash. Noah stepped onto clean earth and constructed an altar. He took clean animals and birds and presented sacrifice. The smoke ascended to heaven, accepted, unlike Cain's offering generations before. God fashioned a covenant with Noah, promising never again to destroy the earth with water. But Jubilees adds something essential. God also restored the authentic calendar that had been lost since Enoch's time. 364 days divided flawlessly into weeks and seasons. The world commenced again, washed clean, but not flawless. And time resumed its march, now with the rainbow as a marker of God's patience. The flood had arrived exactly when heaven ordained it. The next judgment would arrive on schedule as well. Noah's aftermath and the curse of Canaan. The waters retreated, life commenced again. Noah's first act on dry ground was constructing an altar to thank God. His second was planting a vineyard. Jubilees informs us the timing of these occurrences with care. The 27th day of the 2nd month, 1 year and 10 days after the flood commenced. The vine expanded quickly in soil enriched by the flood. Noah harvested grapes and fashioned wine, not understanding its full power. He drank and fell asleep naked in his tent. What transpires next is one of Scripture's strangest tales. Ham, Noah's middle son, perceived his father's nakedness and informed his brothers outside. Shem and Japheth walked backward into the tent, transporting a garment between them. They covered their father without looking at him. When Noah woke and discovered what transpired, he cursed not Ham, but Ham's son, Canaan. Why curse the grandson instead of the son? Genesis doesn't clarify, Jubilees does. In this expanded account, we discover that Ham didn't merely perceive Noah naked. He failed to honor the sacred boundary between father and son. This wasn't merely embarrassment, it was a breach of holy order. Jubilees adds that Noah had separated the earth between his 3 sons before this incident. When Ham demonstrated disrespect, Noah didn't modify the land division, but he did curse Canaan to servitude. The timing matters. The land was already provided. The relationships were now shattered. "Cursed be Canaan," Noah declared. "A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." With these words, Noah established a pattern that would resonate through centuries. The descendants of Canaan would serve the descendants of Shem and Japheth. Jubilees tracks the spread of Noah's family with geographic precision. Shem took the middle of the earth, including what would transform into Israel. Ham took the hot south. Japheth received the cool northern regions. Each son swore an oath to respect these boundaries, but oaths get shattered. Jubilees informs us that Canaan looked at Lebanon and Jordan and decided to take it, though it belonged to Shem. "Cursed be Canaan," the manuscript repeats, "for he settled in the land that wasn't his." This matters profoundly for Jubilees' original readers. The book was probably composed when Jews confronted threats from surrounding nations. By recounting this expanded story of Canaan's curse, Jubilees isn't merely clarifying ancient history. It's asserting that the enemies of Israel are existing on stolen land against divine decree. Noah existed 350 years after the flood, completing 950 years of life. Jubilees documents that he was flawless in all his conduct, keeping God's commands faithfully. In 19 Jubilees and 2 weeks and 5 years. The exact count matters. Noah perished. Before his death, Noah warned his sons about corruption. Jubilees adds a detail Genesis lacks. Noah specifically warned against consuming blood and mixing different types of animals, plants, or clothing. Keeping boundaries clear was sacred responsibility. Noah's sons constructed cities and commenced nations. Children were born. The world filled again. 10 generations had passed from Adam to Noah. Now, a fresh count would commence. The clock kept ticking toward Abraham, Moses, and beyond. What makes Jubilees' account of Noah so remarkable isn't merely the flood story. It's how flawlessly everything fits into heaven's timetable. The flood arrived right on schedule. Noah's life spanned exactly 19 Jubilees, and some weeks, nothing was random. Everything was counted. And in this careful counting, we perceive Jubilees' message. Even disaster serves God's timing. Even curses fulfill heaven's plan. The angels keep observing. The tablets keep recording. Time keeps flowing toward its designated end. The Tower of Babel and the magnificent division. 3 generations after Noah, humanity collected in the land of Shinar with one language and one purpose. "Come," they declared, "let us construct a city and a tower whose top may reach to heaven." Their ambitions stretched toward the sky itself. Jubilees perceives this tower construction as more than merely pride. It was an attempt to escape another flood. Instead of trusting God's rainbow promise, they pursued safety in their own creation. They constructed with baked brick and bitumen, materials that water couldn't easily wash away. God descended to observe this human project. Finding one people with one language constructing toward heaven, God decided to act not in rage, as later interpretations frequently suggest, but in universal reordering. The time had arrived for humanity to spread across the earth as planned. Jubilees provides us exact timing for these occurrences. In the beginning of the 34th Jubilee, the languages were confused. The single human family fractured into 70 nations, matching the 70 angels God had designated over the peoples. This wasn't random division. Jubilees informs us that lots were cast for each nation. To each angel went a people and a language. To each people went a territory with clear borders. Heaven's order imposed itself on human chaos. But one angel received no earthly nation. The Most High himself transformed into the ruler of a 71st portion, the descendants of Shem through Arpachshad, from whom would arrive Abraham. God kept one bloodline under direct guidance. Work on the tower stopped. The city that would afterward be called Babel was abandoned, half-constructed, the people scattered like leaves falling from their vine. East and west, north and south they went, each group now speaking words the others couldn't comprehend. Here, Jubilees adds a vital detail absent from Genesis. After the languages were confused, most angels guided their assigned nations away from authentic worship. They instructed their peoples to fashion idols, present incorrect sacrifices, and observe false calendars. The 70 angels transformed into 70 tempters. Only the portion God kept for himself remembered the right ways, at least for a while. Only they maintained the authentic calendar of 364 days. Only they recalled the proper festivals and Sabbaths. The rest fell into error and ignorance. Nimrod, great-grandson of Noah, constructed the first kingdom after the confusion. Jubilees portrays him not as a mighty hunter before the Lord, but as the first human to battle against heaven's plan. He constructed cities and walls. He instructed warfare. He created borders that didn't match God's division. The once united human family now existed divided lives. Cousin couldn't speak to cousin. Brother fought against brother. Each group claimed their territory and forgot their common source. The angels assigned to each nation guided most of them into deepening darkness. Within this fractured world, authentic knowledge faded. The calendar Enoch had instructed, that Noah had preserved through the flood, was now kept by only a few. Most nations observed lunar months or star patterns that didn't align with heaven's count. 349 years after the flood, in the first year of the second week of the 10th Jubilee, a child was born in Ur of the Chaldees. His name was Abram, afterward Abraham. Through him, God would commence gathering a people who might remember heaven's timing. The Tower of Babel stands in Jubilees as the moment humanity attempted to reach heaven on their own terms, employing their own measurements. They wanted to touch the sky without observing the path God had established. They pursued unity without divine center. The confusion of languages wasn't merely punishment, it was protection. If all humanity had continued as one, speaking one language, constructing one city, their corruption would have known no bounds. Divided, their evil remained local, contained. And so the magnificent division occurred right on heaven's schedule. 70 nations under 70 angels, 70 languages, 70 territories, and one portion kept apart, through whom all nations might someday find blessing again. The clock continued its relentless ticking. The Jubilees marched forward in their count. The stage had been prepared for Abraham to step into the narrative and receive the covenant that would transform everything. Abraham, the chosen one of the timekeeper. In the peaceful village of Ur, a young boy named Abraham observed his father, Terah, fashioning idols from clay and wood. Unlike others in his household, Abraham experienced a profound attraction towards something greater than these inanimate figures. The stars communicated to him of order and design, not random lights but a universal message. One night, while Terah slept, Abraham took a wooden hammer and demolished the idols his father had fashioned. He left only the largest one standing, positioning the hammer in its hand. When Terah discovered the shattered figures, he demanded explanations. The big idol broke them. Abraham responded with quiet certainty. "Can't you see the hammer in his hand?" "Don't be foolish," his father replied sharply. "These are just objects I made. They have no power." "Then why do you worship what your own hands have shaped?" Abraham asked. In that moment, something transformed inside him. The Book of Jubilees informs us this wasn't merely a child's prank. It was the initial step in a journey that would reshape human history. Unlike the brief account in Genesis, Jubilees portrays Abraham as a universal revolutionary. At age 14, he commenced to study the stars, not just as lights, but as markers of time. While others observed moon phases, Abraham discovered the authentic solar year, 364 days, separated into 4 seasons of exactly 13 weeks each. "I will not follow the path of lies," Abraham proclaimed to his family. The young man turned away from idol worship and toward the God who had positioned the stars in their courses. This wasn't just spiritual awakening, it was universal alignment. When famine struck the land, Abraham's family relocated to Haran. There, the young man matured into a teacher. He constructed a special tower where he tracked the sun's movement, demonstrating to anyone who would listen how the authentic calendar functioned. Many scoffed, but some listened. The angel dictating to Moses clarifies that God observed Abraham closely during these years. Unlike others, Abraham didn't just notice the patterns in creation, he traced them back to their source. He recognized that time itself was a gift, a tool, and a test. One night, as Abraham slept under the desert sky, a voice called to him, "Leave your father's house and go to a land I will show you." This wasn't just a command to travel. It was an invitation to step into a fresh timeline, one aligned with heaven's design. The journey was long and marked with trials. Jubilees informs us that at each milestone, Abraham constructed altars, not just as acts of worship, but as markers of universal significance. Each stone placement happened on specific dates, feast days inscribed in the heavenly tablets long before humans walked the earth. When Abraham reached Canaan, he didn't just claim territory. According to Jubilees, he was reclaiming space that had been divinely allocated to Shem's descendants, but wrongfully seized by Canaan's children. This wasn't mere tribal conflict. It was universal realignment, putting things back in their proper order. As Abraham walked the length and breadth of this fresh land, he wasn't just exploring. He was tracing the boundaries of a divine contract. Each step fell on a timeline established before creation. Each movement precisely choreographed by the same hand that positioned the stars. The War of the Kings. The dust ascended in thick clouds as 4 powerful kings marched their armies toward Sodom. They had already crushed 5 other cities, leaving only ash and tears in their path. Among their captives was Lot, Abraham's nephew, dragged away with all he possessed. When a lone survivor brought news to Abraham, the old shepherd didn't hesitate. Although Genesis recounts this story briefly, Jubilees expands the tale, presenting us Abraham not as a reluctant warrior, but as heaven's chosen champion. He assembled 318 trained men, a number Jubilees notes is tied to celestial patterns, and moved with surprising speed. Under the cover of night, Abraham divided his small band into groups. They descended upon the king's camps like a desert storm, sudden, fierce, and overwhelming. The Book of Jubilees informs us this wasn't just military strategy, but divine timing. Each attack happened at the exact hour predetermined in heaven's records. As dawn broke, the mighty armies that had terrorized the plain lay scattered. Abraham had not only rescued Lot, but had captured vast treasures. According to Jubilees, this victory occurred on the exact anniversary of Noah's landing after the flood, a date when divine justice typically manifests in the world. On Abraham's return journey, a mysterious figure emerged on the road: Melchizedek, king of Salem and priest of God Most High. Unlike Genesis, which mentions this meeting briefly, Jubilees presents Melchizedek as more than human, perhaps one of the angels assigned to oversee the sacred timeline. Abraham bowed before Melchizedek, presenting 1/10 of all he had taken. This wasn't just generous giving, it was universal acknowledgement. By this act, Abraham recognized that his victory belonged to a larger pattern, one inscribed in the stars before his birth. Melchizedek blessed Abraham with bread and wine, symbols whose meaning Jubilees connects to future feasts. Each element carried significance tied to the solar calendar. Bread, representing the harvest festivals, wine symbolizing joy in proper seasons. The meeting lasted precisely 1 day, from sunset to sunset, a perfect Sabbath observance, though the law had not yet been given to Moses. According to Jubilees, this wasn't coincidence, but evidence that authentic worship follows heaven's timetable, not human invention. When the king of Sodom offered Abraham wealth as reward, the patriarch refused with words that resonate across time. "I will take nothing, not even a thread." Jubilees clarifies this wasn't just noble character, but sacred wisdom. Abraham comprehended that accepting payment would bind him to human timelines rather than divine ones. As Abraham journeyed home, stars blazed overhead in patterns only he could fully read. The Book of Jubilees informs us. Each constellation confirmed to him that history unfolds not by chance, but by design, with each occurrence happening at its designated time. Circumcision, covenant, and universal territory. The night air felt heavy with promise as Abraham stood beneath a sky crowded with stars. "Look up," the voice declared. "Count them if you can." Abraham's eyes traced the familiar patterns, the same stars he'd studied since youth, now framed as his family's future. According to Jubilees, this covenant moment didn't happen on just any night. It fell precisely 50 years, a complete jubilee, from the day Abraham had first rejected idol worship. Heaven's clockwork turned with flawless precision. While Genesis describes this covenant briefly, Jubilees expands the scene dramatically. The manuscript informs us, Abraham fell into a deep sleep, but this wasn't ordinary rest. His spirit ascended to witness the heavenly tablets where all of time, past, present, and future lay inscribed in light. There, Abraham perceived how the land would be separated, not by human choice, but by divine decree. Each tribe's territory had been mapped before creation, each boundary drawn by the same finger that traced the paths of stars. This wasn't just real estate, it was universal geography. The next morning, Abraham awoke, transformed. The vision still burned in his mind as a voice instructed him, "This is my covenant with you. The flesh of your foreskin must be cut away." Unlike Genesis, which presents circumcision simply as a sign, Jubilees clarifies it as a physical alignment with celestial patterns, the body modified to match heaven's design. Abraham didn't hesitate. At 99 years old, he took a knife and fulfilled the covenant demand. According to Jubilees, he performed this act during the exact hour when the sun reaches its highest point during the spring feast. Another universal alignment. As Abraham's household followed his example, every male from 8 days old to servants bought with silver, the angel Mastema emerged before God's throne. "This man grows too powerful," the accuser argued. "Test him further." Jubilees alone informs us of this heavenly dispute, revealing that Abraham's trials weren't random hardships, but universal contests. When Abraham recovered from his circumcision, 3 figures emerged at his tent. While Genesis calls them men, Jubilees identifies them clearly as angels. Heaven's ambassadors making a scheduled visit on a day marked in celestial records long before Abraham's birth. As Sarah laughed at the promise of a son, Jubilees informs us the sound resonated in heavenly halls, recorded as the origin of Isaac's name centuries before the child's birth. Even human emotions played roles in the universal script. After the messengers departed towards Sodom, Abraham stood before his tent. The stars that had once seemed distant now felt like family, points of light connected to his bloodline by unbreakable oath. According to Jubilees, Abraham had transformed into more than a man. He was now a living timepiece, his heartbeat synchronized with heaven's rhythm. Isaac's near sacrifice. Dawn painted the eastern sky as Abraham saddled his donkey. The wood lay strapped to the animal's back, and the firepot glowed with hot coals. At his side walked Isaac, now a young man, strong enough to carry the heavy load, but still innocent enough to trust his father completely. While Genesis recounts this story in sparse detail, Jubilees completes the gaps with rich meaning. The journey to Moriah didn't happen on just any day. It fell precisely on the date that would centuries later transform into the Day of Atonement. The timing wasn't chance, but careful design. For 3 days, father and son walked in near silence. According to Jubilees, they crossed rivers whose names matched those flowing from Eden. They climbed hills whose shapes resembled mountains, where angels assembled. Every step followed a path mapped in heaven's records. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and perceived the place God had chosen. Unlike the Genesis account, Jubilees informs us, Abraham recognized it immediately, not from any sign, but from deep memory. This was the same spot where Adam had first presented sacrifice, where Noah had constructed an altar after the flood. "The wood is here, and the fire," Isaac declared. "But where is the lamb?" Abraham's reply came softly, "God himself will provide the lamb, my son." In Genesis, these words appear like gentle deception, but Jubilees reveals them as prophecy. Abraham had perceived the future during his covenant vision and knew exactly what would unfold. When they reached the summit, Abraham constructed the altar with careful precision. Each stone was positioned according to patterns shown to him in dreams. Not random rocks, but a universal map, Isaac observed, comprehending more than the Genesis manuscript suggests. "Father," Isaac declared, "bind me well so I don't struggle and make your sacrifice flawed." According to Jubilees, Isaac wasn't a frightened victim, but a willing participant, having been informed of his role in the universal drama. At 25 years old, he could have easily overpowered his elderly father, but chose submission instead. As Abraham raised the knife, heaven itself appeared to hold its breath, but then a voice called out, stopping his hand. An angel, not just any messenger, but the same one who had marked the covenant, emerged with a ram caught in nearby bushes. While Genesis describes this as a test of faith, Jubilees frames it as something more, a universal rehearsal. This hillside drama mirrored occurrences planned for the distant future, when other fathers would confront the loss of firstborn sons on this same date. After the sacrifice, Abraham and Isaac descended the mountain, transformed. According to Jubilees, they returned home on the precise date that would later transform into Passover, when death would again pass over the faithful. The timing fulfilled patterns established before creation, when the heavenly tablets were first inscribed. Rebekah, Jacob, and the angelic inheritance. The old servant's caravan approached the well as young women assembled with their water jars. Abraham had sent him on a sacred mission: find a wife for Isaac from their own people, not from Canaan's daughters. According to Jubilees, this wasn't mere tribal preference, but universal necessity. When Rebekah emerged, the servant knew immediately. Unlike Genesis, which describes a test involving water, Jubilees informs us the servant recognized her, because she matched the exact description given to Abraham by angels years before. Her face, her walk, even the sound of her voice had been foretold. Rebekah's journey to Isaac followed a path marked by divine timing. She arrived at his tent on the anniversary of Sarah's death, a date Jubilees identifies as significant in heaven's records. Their meeting wasn't random chance, but flawless orchestration. For 20 years, Rebekah's womb remained closed. While Genesis mentions this briefly, Jubilees clarifies it as deliberate timing. The twins needed to be born in a specific year, aligned with celestial cycles. Even human fertility followed heaven's timetable. When Rebekah finally conceived, the struggle inside her wasn't just physical discomfort. According to Jubilees, two distinct destinies fought for position. Not just two brothers, but two possible timelines for human history. Each kick and turn represented universal forces at work. "Why is this happening?" Rebekah asked, pressing her hands against her swollen belly. She went to seek answers, though Genesis doesn't specify where. Jubilees completes this gap, informing us she visited Melchizedek, still alive and serving as heaven's record keeper. "Two nations are within you," the priest informed her, "and the older shall serve the younger." These weren't just words of comfort, but universal declaration. According to Jubilees, this prophecy was read directly from the heavenly tablets, unchanged since before creation. When the twins were born, they couldn't have been more different. Esau emerged first, red and hairy, grabbing life with both hands. Jacob followed, his hand gripping his brother's heel. While Genesis presents this as interesting detail, Jubilees perceives profound symbolism. One child rushing ahead of divine timing, the other carefully following heaven's pace. As the boys matured, their paths diverged further. Esau transformed into a hunter, tracking game through wild places. Jacob stayed among the tents, learning the old stories and sacred calendar. According to Jubilees, this wasn't just personality difference, but spiritual alignment. Esau, following human impulse, Jacob attuned to divine rhythm. When Jacob prepared stew that fateful day, Jubilees informs us it wasn't random timing. The red lentil soup simmered on the exact anniversary of Abraham's covenant vision. The smell filled the air as Esau stumbled in, famished from hunting. "Give me some of that red stew," Esau demanded. "I'm starving." "First, sell me your birthright," Jacob answered. In Genesis, this appears opportunistic, but Jubilees reveals Jacob's deeper motivation. He knew the birthright belonged to him according to heaven's plan. He wasn't stealing, but reclaiming what universal order had already assigned him. When Isaac grew old and his eyes dimmed, Rebekah remembered the angel's words from before her son's birth. According to Jubilees, she didn't invent the deception that helped Jacob claim the blessing. She followed instructions given to her in dreams, where angels showed her exactly how to fulfill heaven's design. As Jacob received his father's blessing wearing his brother's clothes, Jubilees informs us angels observed with approval. This wasn't trickery, but universal correction, putting the right son in the right place at the right time, aligning human occurrences with heaven's schedule. Esau's rage at discovering the deception threatened to tear the family apart. But according to Jubilees, even this anger served the greater plan. It forced Jacob to flee, setting him on a journey that would transform not just one man, but an entire people, right on heaven's flawless schedule. Jacob's ladder and angelic visitation. The night fell cold and quiet as Jacob rested his head upon a stone. Fleeing from his brother's rage, he found himself alone between worlds. No longer in his father's house, not yet in the land of Laban. Little did he know that this barren spot would transform into a bridge between heaven and earth. Sleep arrived, and with it a vision unlike any other. A vast ladder stretched from the dust at his feet all the way into the clouds beyond sight. This wasn't just a dream of escape, but a glimpse into the universal order that Jubilees describes with such care. Along this gleaming stairway moved the angels, not random messengers, but the organized ranks of heaven. They crossed a boundary that humans rarely perceive, moving between realms usually kept apart. Up and down they went, transporting reports, delivering judgments, maintaining the divine order that Jubilees insists governs all things. What makes this vision special in Jubilees is how it functions as a border crossing. Jacob stumbles upon a thin place, a spot where heaven touches earth. Unlike Genesis, which keeps the vision brief, Jubilees expands it into a full celestial meeting. God speaks to Jacob from above the ladder, renewing the promise first given to Abraham. The land beneath the dreamer would one day belong to his countless descendants. Nations would bow before his lineage. But Jubilees adds something essential, a timeline. This isn't just a vague future promise, but a scheduled occurrence in heaven's calendar. When Jacob wakes, trembling with awe, he doesn't just name the place Bethel, as Genesis informs us. In Jubilees, he performs a full ritual, marking the exact date and time of this encounter. He pours oil, makes vows, and establishes the first tax, a tenth of all he possesses, given back to God. Jacob transforms into a timekeeper, just like his grandfather Abraham. But while Jacob establishes this holy site, darker forces plot against him. Mastema, heaven's accuser, observes with growing concern. This divine promise threatens his influence over the nations. In Jubilees, we discover that Mastema attempted to claim dominion over the Gentile lands after Babel's confusion. Now, Jacob's blessing challenges that claim. The manuscript hints at unseen battles. Angels guard Jacob's path to Laban, warding off dark spirits who would lead him astray. Each step of his journey happens right on heaven's schedule, not a moment too soon, not a day too late. At the heart of this story lies Jubilee's most treasured theme. Nothing in human history happens by chance. The ladder isn't just a pretty image, but proof of ongoing management. Angels don't just deliver messages. They enforce universal law, track human behavior, and report every detail back to God. Jacob's dream marks him as the next link in a divine plan spanning countless generations. The spot where he sleeps will one day host a temple. The God who speaks from the ladder's top will fashion covenants with his children's children. And the angels climbing up and down will continue their endless work, keeping time, marking days, and ensuring that heaven's will transforms into earth's reality. Bethel transforms into not just a place of worship, but a timestamp in the grand chronicle of creation. Dinah and the Blood Pact. The tale of Dinah differs greatly in the Book of Jubilees from what you might remember in Genesis. Where the Bible offers a tragic story of violation and revenge, Jubilees transforms it into something else entirely, a defense of tribal purity and divine justice. The story commences simply enough. Jacob's daughter Dinah visits the women of Shechem, a nearby city. There, the prince perceives her, desires her, and takes her. What follows in Genesis reads like a sad tale of human passion and revenge. But Jubilees reshapes this narrative into a universal drama about keeping bloodlines pure and fulfilling heaven's decrees. In Genesis, Jacob's sons trick the men of Shechem into getting circumcised, then attack while they recover. It's a troubling tale of deception and excessive force. But Jubilees frames their actions as righteous, even holy. The manuscript states firmly, "For this deed they are inscribed for blessing in the heavenly tablets." Why such praise for what appears like a brutal massacre? Because Jubilees views intermarriage as a grave sin against the universal order. The book asserts that long before this occurrence, Noah had separated the world among his sons, assigning each to their proper place. The Shechemites belonged to Shem's portion, but Canaan, cursed earlier, had wrongfully settled there. Their very presence violated heaven's boundaries. Dinah's brothers transform into agents of divine justice, not just vengeful siblings. Their violence restores a boundary that should never have been crossed. What's more, Jubilees informs us the exact date of this occurrence. The timing itself matters, aligning with heavenly patterns established at creation. The angel narrating to Moses clarifies that this bloodshed functions as warning for all Israel's future. Any who marry outside the chosen line confront divine punishment. The brothers didn't overreact. They fulfilled an eternal law inscribed before time commenced. Simeon and Levi, often criticized in other Jewish manuscripts, received special praise in Jubilees. Their names are recorded for blessing in the heavenly tablets, those same universal ledgers that track every moral choice, every birth and death, every keeping or breaking of divine law. Even Jacob's initial anger at his sons gets reframed. His fear of retaliation from neighboring tribes transforms into unnecessary worry, for heaven itself shields them after their righteous act. Angels prevent any revenge against Jacob's family, keeping them safe as they journey away from Shechem. Blood purity transforms into central to Jubilee's message here. The mixing of chosen and unchosen seed threatens the entire divine plan. Jacob's line must remain separate, untouched by outside influence. The heavenly tablets demand it, the angels enforce it, and the patriarchs must honor it. What Genesis presents as a complex human tragedy, Jubilees transforms into a simple morality tale about keeping boundaries firmly in place. Time, space, blood, and law all align in this moment of violence. For readers of Jubilees, Dinah's story isn't about victimhood or vengeance, but about maintaining the universal order that governs all things. The blood spilled at Shechem inscribes another entry in heaven's eternal record. Joseph sold, timeline preserved. The story of Joseph marks one of the Bible's most beloved tales, a younger brother sold by jealous siblings only to ascend from slavery to glory. But in Jubilees, this familiar narrative takes on fresh significance, transforming into another proof that heaven's timetable cannot be disrupted, even by human cruelty. Joseph's tale commences as it does in Genesis. The favored son receives a special coat from his father. He dreams of future greatness. His brothers grow envious. But Jubilees adds essential details about timing that Genesis leaves out. When the brothers plot against Joseph, they do so on the exact day that their father, Jacob, mourns the anniversary of his mother's death. This isn't random coincidence, but meaningful symmetry. One grief resonates another across generations, all recorded in heaven's flawless ledger. The brothers strip Joseph of his coat and cast him into a pit. In Genesis, this act stems purely from human emotion, jealousy, resentment, rivalry, but Jubilees reveals unseen forces at work. Mastema, the accuser, seizes this moment to attack Jacob's faith. The evil one whispers to the brothers, inflaming their hatred beyond natural bounds. Yet what appears like a victory for dark powers actually advances heaven's plan. Joseph must go to Egypt. He must ascend to power there. He must save his family from famine. All this stands inscribed in the heavenly tablets long before Joseph draws his first breath. When the Midianite merchants pull Joseph from the pit and transport him toward Egypt, they follow a path marked out before time commenced. What looks like tragedy serves a greater purpose. The brothers believe they've transformed their family story, but they've merely played their assigned parts in a vast, universal drama. Jubilees traces the exact timing of Joseph's journey. It counts the days between his departure from Canaan and his ascent in Pharaoh's court. Nothing happens too early or too late. Even in foreign lands, far from sacred spaces, heaven's clock ticks with flawless precision. Jacob's grief receives special attention in Jubilees. The father puts on sackcloth, mourning his lost son with bitter tears. But the manuscript reveals something Genesis doesn't. Angels observe this suffering, recording each moment of sorrow. Jacob's pain isn't meaningless, but measured, adding to the grand account that heaven keeps of human life. The brothers' deception, dipping Joseph's coat in goat's blood and presenting it to their father, transforms into more than family trickery in Jubilees. It represents a momentary victory for Mastema, who delights in falsehood. Yet even this deception serves the greater plan, pushing occurrences toward their designated end. Joseph's descent into slavery, his false imprisonment, his gift for dream interpretation, all unfold according to heaven's blueprint. What appears like chance encounters and lucky breaks are actually divine appointments, timed to the day and hour. Jubilees reminds us that Egypt itself had been assigned to Ham's descendants during Noah's division of the earth. Joseph's presence there represents a temporary crossing of boundaries that heaven established. Yet, this boundary crossing serves a purpose, preparing for the greater exodus to arrive. In prison, Joseph doesn't merely endure, he witnesses. His suffering transforms into testimony. And all the while, angels mark his path, measuring his steps against the eternal schedule established before creation. Not a moment is wasted, not a tear falls uncounted. The heavenly scribes record it all in their flawless books. The Joseph cycle ends, the bondage commences. The famine strikes just as Joseph predicted. 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of lack. But Jubilees perceives more than natural disaster in this pattern. It reveals divine precision, a measured judgment delivered on schedule. Joseph stands ready, having filled Egypt's storehouses during the good years. Now, as hunger spreads across lands, his brothers journey south seeking food. The reunion unfolds much as Genesis recounts it. Joseph recognizes them while remaining unknown himself. He tests them, accuses them, finally reveals himself with tears and embraces. Jubilees add something essential to this familiar tale: exact dates. The manuscript tracks precisely when Jacob hears about Joseph being alive, when he commences his journey to Egypt, when he crosses each boundary along the way. Every movement aligns with patterns established at creation, fulfilling promises made to Abraham generations earlier. When Jacob arrives in Egypt, Pharaoh welcomes him warmly. But Jubilees reveals what Genesis merely hints at. This welcome marks the beginning of a divine test. Egypt isn't meant to be Israel's home, but a temporary shelter, a proving ground. The heavenly tablets already record the exact span of their stay, the suffering they'll endure, and the mighty deliverance to arrive. Joseph settles his family in Goshen, giving them the best of the land. They prosper and multiply, fulfilling God's command to be fruitful. Yet Jubilees warns that this prosperity carries danger. With comfort arrives the risk of forgetting who they are, of adopting Egyptian ways and Egyptian gods. As Joseph ages, Jubilees presents him growing concerned about this very issue. But before perishing, he assembles his brothers and makes them swear an oath. They must remember their homeland. They must transport his bones back to Canaan when they eventually return. This isn't just family sentiment, but universal necessity. Joseph belongs to promised land, not Egyptian soil. After Joseph's death, a shift occurs that Genesis describes briefly, but Jubilees expands into a spiritual crisis. A fresh Pharaoh arises, who didn't know Joseph. This isn't just political change, but universal conflict. The fresh ruler serves other gods, follows different rhythms. He disrupts the careful balance Joseph maintained between Hebrew identity and Egyptian residency. Gradually, through measured steps recorded in heaven's flawless accounts, the Egyptians commence to fear their Hebrew guests. What starts as suspicion expands into policy. What commences as caution transforms into cruelty. Slavery doesn't happen overnight, but unfolds across precisely tracked years. When Pharaoh orders Hebrew boys thrown into the Nile, Jubilees perceives more than human evil at work. Mastema, heaven's accuser, stands behind this decree. The dark angel who once whispered to Joseph's brothers now whispers to Egypt's king. Each drowned child marks another assault on Abraham's promised lineage. Yet, even in this darkness, heaven's timetable remains unbroken. The suffering possesses limits, the bondage and designated end. Moses' birth doesn't happen by chance, but right on schedule, marked in the heavenly tablets before creation. The deliverer arrives exactly when heaven ordains, not a day sooner or later. Jubilees reveals that angels observe over the chosen people even in their misery. They count the lashes of Egyptian whips. They record each Hebrew tear. They measure the growing cry that will soon reach heaven's throne and trigger the greatest liberation story ever recounted. The bondage intensifies, but the divine clock keeps flawless time. Moses versus Mastema. The Book of Jubilees reimagines the familiar Exodus story with a startling addition. Behind Pharaoh's stubbornness stands Mastema, heaven's accuser, fighting a battle that spans both worlds. Moses matures in Pharaoh's house, then flees after eliminating an Egyptian. When he returns to Egypt years afterward, he transports heaven's authority. But Jubilees reveals something Genesis doesn't. Mastema himself stands ready to oppose him. When Moses first approaches Pharaoh, demanding freedom for the Hebrews, the king refuses, as we expect. But Jubilees presents us why. Mastema strengthens his resolve, hardens his heart beyond normal human stubbornness. This isn't just political resistance, but universal warfare. The plagues commence, but Jubilees describes them differently than Exodus does. Each plague isn't just a natural disaster, but an angelic assault targeting specific Egyptian gods and the dark powers behind them. Blood fills the Nile not just as warning to Pharaoh, but as direct attack on Egypt's river deities. When Moses turns his staff into a snake that devours the magician's serpents, Jubilees perceives more than clever trickery. Heaven directly challenges Mastema's magic, proving divine power superior to dark arts. The Egyptian magicians don't merely fail, they serve the incorrect master. Mastema's response expands desperate. He instructs the Egyptian sorcerers how to mimic some plagues, hoping to convince Pharaoh that Moses wields no special power. For a brief moment, it functions. Pharaoh perceives blood and frogs created by his own magicians and hardens his heart further. But as the plagues intensify, Mastema's magic fails. The manuscript reveals that heaven positions limits on what the accuser can accomplish. He cannot create lice or any smaller creature. His power stops where authentic creation commences. The magicians themselves admit defeat. This is the finger of God. The battle escalates with each refusal. Flies, cattle disease, boils. Each plague targets a different Egyptian deity, stripping away Mastema's borrowed authority. The darkness that falls over Egypt represents more than lack of light. It symbolizes the accuser's fading influence. When the final plague approaches, death for the firstborn, Jubilees presents us something remarkable. Mastema himself transforms into the destroyer, but only under heaven's strict control. The accuser who sought to destroy Israel transforms into the unwilling agent of Egypt's judgment. The very power that fought against Moses must now serve heaven's purpose. The Passover receives special attention in Jubilees. The blood on doorposts isn't just a sign for a passing angel, but a binding restraint on Mastema himself. He cannot enter where this blood marks the way. His power shatters against this simple protection. As the Hebrews prepare to depart Egypt, Mastema makes one final attempt to keep them enslaved. He urges Pharaoh to pursue them even after agreeing to their release. The accuser knows what's approaching. His defeat at the Red Sea will resonate across generations. When the waters part for Israel and close over Egypt's chariots, Jubilees perceives more than natural wonder. The sea itself transforms into a battlefield between universal forces. Angels drive back waters, while Mastema drives forward Egypt's troops. Heaven wins this contest decisively. The drowning of Pharaoh's army doesn't just end the pursuit. It shatters Mastema's power over Israel for a season. The accuser retreats, wounded but not destroyed. He will return to test them in the wilderness, but his authority has suffered a crushing blow. Moses stands victorious, but Jubilees makes clear his victory belongs to heaven's flawless timing. Each plague, each confrontation, each miracle happened exactly when the heavenly tablets decreed it should. Not even Mastema could disrupt the divine schedule. The Exodus commences right on heaven's flawless clock. The Exodus and the covenant clock. The darkness lifts. Dawn breaks over the desert as thousands of Hebrew families stand at the edge of Egypt, their backs to generations of bondage. The timing is flawless. It must be. This moment was inscribed in heaven long before any human walked the earth. For the Book of Jubilees, the Exodus isn't just a historical occurrence, it's a universal appointment kept with divine precision. The angel informs Moses that this day was marked in the heavenly calendar from the beginning of creation. The 14th day of the first month, the day when freedom would burst forth like the spring sun. Picture the scene. The Israelites had been instructed to slaughter lambs at twilight, marking their doorposts with blood. They consumed in haste, sandals on feet, staffs in hand. But Jubilees adds a detail Genesis doesn't share. Angels stood watch that night, not just passing over homes, but actively guarding them. The destroyer wasn't merely a plague or natural force, but Mastema's agents seeking any crack in the divine protection. And the Lord accomplished everything according to his word. The angel informs Moses. Every plague, every warning, every moment of the escape, all unfolded according to a timetable established before time commenced. The Egyptians didn't just confront natural disasters. They confronted heaven's armies, moving with clockwork certainty. The timing matters profoundly to the writer of Jubilees. The exact day and hour of freedom wasn't random chance or lucky escape. It was the fulfillment of a promise made to Abraham 430 years earlier to the day. Heaven operates on time. When the Israelites reach the sea, Moses raises his staff. Jubilees describes this moment differently than Exodus does. Here, the sea doesn't just part through divine power. It returns to its original created boundaries. Creation itself makes way for the divine plan. Pharaoh's army drowns not simply through natural forces, but because they violated sacred time. They've opposed the divine timeline. The sea closing over them isn't just water returning, but time itself crushing those who attempted to stand against its flow. The newly freed slaves sing on the shore, but Jubilees adds that angels join them, heavenly voices blending with human ones. Freedom rings across dimensions. The first Passover isn't just remembered, it's eternally present in heaven's courts. And now, as they journey toward Sinai, Jubilees presents us something profound. Each camp, each water stop, each moment of testing in the wilderness, all happen in flawless alignment with heavenly patterns. The manna doesn't fall randomly. It emerges precisely when the heavenly storehouses open according to their designated times. When they reach the mountain, Moses ascends, not just to receive law, but to discover how earth's clock syncs with heaven's. The first lesson isn't "thou shalt not," but here is when. The feast days, the Sabbaths, the years of Jubilee, all are instructed as ways to align human life with universal rhythms. Moses discovers that Passover isn't just about remembering freedom, it's about participating in freedom that exists eternally in heaven. Each time the feast is properly observed, heaven and earth align, the barriers thin. But each time it's forgotten or its timing transformed, creation itself shudders. The covenant at Sinai then transforms into more than rules. It transforms into a way of moving through time in harmony with divine purpose. And the greatest sin isn't just breaking a command, it's breaking time itself. Sinai, the authentic one. The mountain trembles, smoke ascends. Lightning flashes across stone peaks as Moses climbs higher, leaving the camp behind. But what transpires next is where Jubilees parts ways with the familiar Bible story. On Sinai, Moses doesn't just receive laws carved in stone, he receives the secret history of time itself. The angel of the presence, one of heaven's highest ministers, reveals to Moses that what he's about to acquire was inscribed long before humans existed. "I will inform you," the angel declares, "from the beginning of creation until my sanctuary is constructed among you for all eternity." This is Sinai's authentic purpose, not just law-giving, but time-teaching. Moses discovers that before anything was fashioned, God created the laws of heaven, including the flawless calendar of 364 days. This number matters profoundly in Jubilees. It's flawlessly divisible by 7, meaning each date falls on the same day of the week, year after year. No drift, no confusion, no human adjustment required. The angel presents Moses the heavenly tablets, not just commandments, but the entire script of history inscribed before time commenced. Every feast day, every designated time was established before the first human drew breath. The sun, moon, and stars were positioned not just for light, but as the universal clock's moving hands. As lightning plays across the mountain face, Moses discovers that Adam knew these laws. Enoch recorded them. Noah preserved them through the flood. But time and again, humans drift from heaven's flawless timing. They observe the changing moon instead of the steady sun. They add days where none should exist. They celebrate at the incorrect times, and creation groans. The tablets shown to Moses aren't just rules, they're reality's blueprint. The angel clarifies how each law connects to occurrences in heaven. The Sabbath mirrors eternal rest. Passover resonates eternal freedom. The Day of Atonement reflects universal cleansing. These aren't just days to note, but moments when human experience can touch divine reality. What might appear like dry details in Jubilees' endless dates and times are actually its beating heart. The angel wants Moses to comprehend that getting the calendar right isn't just about scheduling. It's about harmony with creation's deepest patterns. While the people wait below, Moses discovers that sin isn't just about actions, but about timing. To consume the incorrect food is bad, but to consume the right food at the incorrect time is universal rebellion. To work is good, but to work on Sabbath tears the fabric between worlds. The angel clarifies that this is why Israel was chosen, not just to observe rules, but to keep time, to be the nation that aligns earth with heaven through flawlessly timed observances. Their feasts and fasts aren't just cultural markers, but universal tuning forks, bringing creation back into harmony. Moses trembles as he comprehends the weight of this knowledge. Every date recorded in Jubilees, and there are hundreds, matters because each represents a moment when heaven and earth can align, a moment when humans can step briefly into divine patterns. The authentic revelation at Sinai, according to Jubilees, isn't just morality, but meaning, not just how to behave, but how to belong in time itself. The law isn't burdensome, but liberating. It allows humans to move in rhythm with angels, participate in time as heaven experiences it. As Moses prepares to descend, the angel informs him one more truth. These tablets, this heavenly calendar, will be opposed. Nations will create their own times. Even some of Israel will stray. But those who keep heaven's clock will never truly be lost. They will always possess a path back to divine harmony. Why Jubilees cherishes the law. Most people think of laws as restrictions, lines drawn that we shouldn't cross. But Jubilees perceives them differently. Here, laws aren't walls, but windows, openings through which divine light pours. The angel speaking to Moses describes each command not as a burden, but as a gift. Each rule connects to a moment in universal history, a thread woven into creation's tapestry. These aren't random rules, but revelations of how reality functions at its deepest level. Take the Sabbath in Jubilees. It's not just a day off, it's the day when humans can taste what angels experience eternally. The angel informs Moses that even in heaven the highest powers observe Sabbath. It's not that they require rest, they require harmony. The seventh day isn't arbitrary, but essential to creation's rhythm. God blessed the seventh day alone, the angel declares. All holy things are blessed and hallowed on this day. When humans honor Sabbath, they step into alignment with powers they can barely comprehend. The food laws might appear strange to modern readers. Don't consume this, don't touch that. But Jubilees frames them as protection, not restriction. The angel clarifies that these foods connect to spiritual forces. Some strengthen the human spirit, others invite corruption. The laws aren't about health, but about spiritual integrity. Sexual regulations in Jubilees aren't just moral codes, but reflections of heavenly order. The angel reveals that violations of these boundaries don't just harm humans, but tear at creation's fabric. When Israel observes these laws, they're not just being good, they're participating in universal repair. Even stranger rules make sense in this light. The command to cover nakedness when relieving oneself. In Jubilees, this isn't about modesty, but about maintaining boundaries between holy and common. Angels shield their eyes in heaven's most sacred spaces. Humans mirror this pattern on earth. For the writer of Jubilees, the law's beauty lies in its flawless timing. Each command possesses its moment. Circumcision on the 8th day, harvest offerings at exact times, festivals when the sun reaches certain positions. These aren't just details. They're doorways to participation in eternal patterns. The law in Jubilees differs from other Jewish manuscripts of the time. Here, laws aren't open to interpretation or adaptation. They're fixed as creation itself. The angel informs Moses that these commands existed before humans and will outlast them. They aren't cultural artifacts, but universal constants. This clarifies Jubilees' most remarkable feature, its obsession with getting things exactly right. The incorrect day, the incorrect ritual, the incorrect boundaries matter because they shatter alignment with heaven's flawless order. Sin isn't just about hurting others, but about disrupting harmony between realms. Moses discovers that the law isn't a test of obedience, but an invitation to belonging. By living according to heaven's rhythms, humans can step partially into eternity, experiencing time as angels do, not as a line rushing forward, but as a dance cycling through flawless patterns. The greatest gift of the law, according to Jubilees, is that it makes humans more than mortal. By following heaven's time, they participate in something death cannot touch. Their lives transform into echoes of eternal patterns, their smallest actions rippling across dimensions. And so the laws are recorded not as burdens, but as love letters from heaven, instructions for how to exist in time while touching eternity. Feast days, blood, and timing. The sun slips below the horizon, the first stars emerge, a fresh month commences. But which month? According to what calendar? For most ancient people, these might appear like simple questions, but for the writer of Jubilees, they're matters of universal importance. The angel clarifies to Moses that feast days aren't just celebrations, they're moments when the veil between heaven and earth grows thin. When humans celebrate at the right time, they briefly step into harmony with angelic rhythms, but celebrate on the incorrect day, and the moment's power is lost. Passover commences the sacred year. The angel describes how this feast doesn't just commemorate freedom, but actively channels its power. When families assemble on the 14th day of the first month, not the 13th, not the 15th. They align with the moment when liberation's energy flows most strongly from heaven to earth. The timing must be exact. Jubilees insists on a 364-day solar year, not the lunar calendar many Jewish communities would later adopt. The angel warns Moses that following the moon leads to drift, to celebration on the incorrect days, to universal misalignment. They will disturb the days, the angel declares, and make a day of testimony something worthless and a profane day, a feast. This isn't just calendar confusion, it's spiritual disaster. Blood plays a central role in these precisely timed feasts. Not because heaven demands sacrifice, but because blood carries life's essence. When properly offered at the right moment, it transforms into a conduit between worlds. The angel describes how the blood positioned on doorposts at Passover forms an actual barrier against destructive forces. The Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, receives special attention. The angel informs Moses that this isn't just about forgiveness, but about universal cleansing. On this day, heaven's courts are most accessible, prayers ascend more directly. But pray on the incorrect day, and those prayers find closed gates. Tabernacles, the Feast of Booths, connects humans to their wandering ancestors. But more importantly, it connects them to the early days of creation, when boundaries between heaven and earth were newer and thinner. Building temporary shelters isn't symbolic, it's participatory. Humans briefly exist as Adam did, more directly under heaven's gaze. First fruits, Pentecost, new moons. Each feast creates a specific bridge between worlds, but only when observed at the exact right time. Jubilees treats these moments as physical realities, not just cultural memories. The angel warns Moses about a future problem. Some will observe a lunar calendar of 354 days. This appears small, just 10 days difference per year, but these errors accumulate. Feasts drift through seasons, alignments shatter. Heaven's gates open, but no one stands ready to walk through. For the writer of Jubilees, these calendar disputes aren't academic debates, but spiritual warfare. The forces opposing God's order, led by Mastema, actively work to confuse the times and seasons. When Israel observes the incorrect calendar, they unknowingly serve confusion's prince. This clarifies Jubilees' harsh language about calendar keepers who forget the right timing. They aren't just making mistakes, they're breaking the covenant at its core. Authentic faithfulness isn't just about what you do, but when you do it. Blood, timing, and covenant intertwine together in Jubilee's understanding of feast days. These aren't just holidays, but holy days, moments when eternity touches time, when human celebration harmonizes with angelic worship, when the barriers between worlds grow momentarily thin. And so the feasts transform into more than memory. They transform into medicine for a broken world, realigning creation with Creator through the power of flawless timing. Mastema's final tricks. While Moses receives heaven's flawless calendar on the mountain, darkness assembles below. The angel reveals to him that Mastema, heaven's great accuser, has not been idle. As divine order is being clarified above, chaos is being sown below. Jubilees offers a unique vision of spiritual warfare. Mastema isn't presented as God's equal opposite, not quite Satan as later traditions would know him. He's more like a prosecuting attorney who's grown too fond of convicting the accused. Originally tasked with testing humans, he's developed a taste for their failure. The angel informs Moses how Mastema approaches God's throne with accusations against Israel. See how quickly they turn aside, he argues. They aren't worthy of your law. But his deeper game is more subtle. He works to confuse the times and seasons, to blur the calendar lines that connect earth to heaven. When the people grow restless at the mountain's base, Mastema perceives opportunity. He whispers doubts. Moses has been gone too long. The timing is incorrect. The wait has exceeded what was promised. Temporal confusion leads to spiritual rebellion. The golden calf doesn't just represent idolatry in Jubilees. It represents a break in time itself, a human attempt to create their own religious schedule rather than waiting for heaven's designated moment. And this, the angel clarifies, is Mastema's specialty, not just tempting people to do incorrect things, but to do things at incorrect times. But Mastema's influence extends beyond this moment. The angel reveals his pattern through history, always emerging at transitions, at boundary moments, at times when heaven's clock strikes important hours. Remember Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac? Jubilees reveals that Mastema challenged God. This man loves his son. Ask for the boy as a burnt offering, he'll refuse. Testing Abraham wasn't originally God's idea, but arrived from the accuser's suggestion. When Jacob wrestled until daybreak, his opponent wasn't just a mysterious figure, but one of Mastema's agents attempting to prevent him from entering the promised land on heaven's timetable. Even the Egyptian magicians who mimicked Moses' first signs weren't just skilled humans, but men drawing on Mastema's limited power. The angel clarifies that Mastema can copy divine work but never create originally. He can only distort what God has fashioned. The plagues of Egypt weren't just about freeing Israel, but about binding Mastema. The angel reveals that after the early contests between Moses and the magicians, God permits Mastema to be bound for a time, limiting his interference in the Exodus. His temporary restraint clarifies why the later plagues met no magical resistance. But now, as Israel stands poised to receive the covenant, Mastema works more subtly. He doesn't oppose God directly, but works to disconnect people from divine timing. Incorrect calendars, imprecise feast days, forgotten Sabbaths, these transform into his tools. The punishment for these errors isn't arbitrary, but organic. When people step out of heaven's time, they expose themselves to forces that divine timing would have protected them from. The angel clarifies that disease, conflict, and confusion naturally flow into the gaps created by misaligned observance. Generations that observe incorrect calendars won't just irritate God, they'll drift further from reality itself, becoming vulnerable to Mastema's expanding influence. The accuser doesn't need to destroy people, he simply needs to get them operating on the incorrect timetable. The most chilling revelation arrives when the angel informs Moses that punishment frequently spans generations, not as divine vengeance, but because temporal distortions take time to correct. Children inherit not just genes, but universal positioning. Realignment with heaven's time frequently takes generations to achieve. Yet the angel offers hope. Even in times of greatest confusion, some will maintain the authentic calendar. A remnant will celebrate at the right moments. And through them, the path back to alignment remains open, narrow, but never completely closed. The forbidden calendars. In the hidden war of time itself, nothing sparked more fury than the clash of calendars. Jubilees stands firm on one central truth. God created a flawless 364-day solar year. This wasn't merely a counting system, but the heartbeat of creation itself. The sun's path marked holy time, steady and unchanging. Yet across the ancient world, other peoples observed the fickle moon with its wandering months. The Babylonians, whose culture seeped into Jewish life during exile, tracked lunar cycles that shifted with each passing year. These competing calendars weren't just different ways to mark days. For the writer of Jubilees, they represented universal rebellion. When Israel adopted lunar reckoning, they shattered harmony with heaven itself. The holy feasts meant to align with celestial powers fell on incorrect days. Prayers missed their mark, sacrifices lost power. Why such passion over a calendar? Because in Jubilees, time isn't just passing moments, it's God's most sacred creation. The 364-day year divides flawlessly into weeks, 52 complete 7-day cycles, with each season lasting exactly 13 weeks. 4 flawless quarters, each 91 days, no messy leftover hours or minutes to adjust. Within this structure, holy days never drift, Passover always falls on the same date, Sabbaths stay fixed points in eternity. This order mirrors heaven's own rhythm. Angels keep the same feasts on the same days, year after unchanging year. The community of Qumran clutched this belief like a lifeline. Their scrolls reveal an obsession with the solar calendar far beyond normal religious concern. For them, the temple priests in Jerusalem had fallen into universal error. By following lunar months, they'd shattered the eternal covenant. These calendar wars weren't academic disputes, but a battle for divine favor. The Qumran sect believed catastrophes fell on Israel precisely because they'd abandoned heaven's authentic timeline. Follow false time, reap divine punishment. In one striking passage, Jubilees describes angels positioning the solar system in motion specifically to create this divine clockwork. The sun, greater light, rules the day and year. The moon serves only as night's lamp, not time's measure. And God appointed the sun to be a great sign upon the earth for days, Sabbaths, months, feasts, years, Sabbaths of years, jubilees, and for all seasons of the years. For modern ears, such calendar fixation appears strange, but in ancient minds, right ritual at right time opened doors between worlds. A prayer said when heaven wasn't listening, wasted breath. A feast celebrated on incorrect days missed its purpose. The Essenes who treasured jubilees lived this belief daily. Their dawn prayers tracked solar progress. Their celebrations ignored Jerusalem's official calendar. They waited for heaven to restore proper time, when sun, stars, feasts, and angels would again move in flawless sync. This battle over time didn't end with ancient sects. It resonates through religious history whenever groups claim special insight into divine timing. The calendar remains a powerful symbol of who controls sacred rhythm: priests, prophets, or the voice of tradition. The land, the law, the legacy. In Jubilee's vision, three strands weave together into one unbreakable covenant: land, law, and time. Each belongs to the others in eternal harmony. The land of Israel isn't just territory, but sacred space where heaven touches earth. The law isn't merely rules, but the operating system of creation. And time binds everything together in cycles of meaning. When the angel reveals these connections to Moses, he speaks with urgent clarity. The land given to Abraham's children possesses borders drawn by divine hands. Each tribe's portion matches a heavenly pattern. Rivers, mountains, and plains mirror universal geography. And he declared to the angels, "Let us fashion man in our image and likeness." And they created Adam and his wife and blessed them. And God presented him the land from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, all the land which was to be his seed's inheritance forever. This land promise carries strict conditions. It remains Israel's only while they observe God's timetable and commands. Shatter the calendar, the Sabbaths, or the food laws, and the land itself will expel them. Jubilees describes this connection in physical terms. The soil actually rejects those who defile it. The law in Jubilees goes far beyond Moses. It existed before creation, inscribed on heavenly tablets by God's own hand. Angels observe these same commands. Adam knew them in Eden. Abraham observed them centuries before Sinai. The patriarchs weren't fumbling toward truth, but kept the full law through angelic teaching. This eternal view of Torah challenges later rabbinic innovations. For Jubilees, no human court can adjust divine law. No emergency suspends Sabbath rules. The commands stand fixed like stars, unchanging reference points in a shifting world. Most remarkable is how Jubilees connects Israel's national story to universal stakes. Their keeping or breaking covenant doesn't just affect their prosperity, but determines creation's fate. When they observe holy time and law, harmony flows through all realms. When they rebel, chaos threatens even angelic spheres. The writer frames this responsibility as both burden and glory. Israel alone carries knowledge of authentic time. They alone preserve the rhythms that sustain worlds. Their priests serve alongside heavenly counterparts. Their festivals open gates between dimensions. This legacy passes down through blood and teaching. Jubilees traces careful genealogies, demonstrating how covenant knowledge traveled from father to son. Abraham blesses Jacob, not Esau, because only Jacob will preserve the calendar. Joseph resists Egypt's temptations to keep time truth alive. For modern readers seeking ancient wisdom, this interweaving of land, law, and legacy reveals religion's deepest roots. Before theology arrived, these primal connections, holy space, sacred rhythm, and the chain of memory linking generations. Jubilees offers not just rules, but a complete vision of human purpose in universal order. The prophecy of apostasy. As Moses receives these heavenly revelations, the angel's voice turns somber. With flawless clarity, he unfolds Israel's future failures. Though they've witnessed God's power at the sea and Sinai, they will not remain faithful. Though they carry time's secrets and law's wisdom, they will turn aside. This prophecy isn't vague warning, but precise foreknowledge. Israel will enter the promised land. They'll enjoy prosperity. Then slowly, generation by generation, they'll forget heaven's calendar. They'll adopt foreign ways. They'll shatter Sabbaths, consume forbidden foods, intermarry with nations who observe false gods and false time. And they will forget all my law and all my commandments and all my judgments, and will go astray concerning new moons, Sabbaths, festivals, jubilees, and ordinances. The angel doesn't speak with anger, but with sorrow, like a parent who perceives their child's painful path ahead. This falling away isn't sudden rebellion, but slow drift, like a boat untethered from shore. First, they'll keep the feasts on incorrect days. Then, they'll neglect them entirely. Finally, they'll forget why these rhythms mattered at all. Divine response follows in measured steps. Warnings arrive through prophets. When those go unheeded, foreign oppressors arrive. The temple, center of right timing and sacrifice, falls to enemies. The land, linked to covenant keeping, expels its people into exile. Yet even in this dark forecast shines a thread of hope. The apostasy, though certain, isn't final. After punishment arrives restoration. A faithful remnant preserves authentic knowledge through the darkest times. They return to the calendar of their fathers. They rebuild broken altars. They recalculate holy time. And after this they will turn to me from among the nations with all their heart and with all their soul and with all their strength, and I will assemble them from among all the nations. This cycle of faithfulness, falling away, and return shapes Jubilee's view of history. It's not linear progress, but spiral movement away from and back to covenant truth. Each generation confronts the same choice as their ancestors, to observe heaven's rhythm or the world's. For the book's original readers, probably living through cultural pressures under Greek or early Roman rule, this prophecy offered both warning and comfort. Their struggles weren't unique, but part of an ancient pattern. Their choices carried the same weight as their forefathers. And faithful keeping of the solar calendar wasn't outdated tradition, but revolutionary resistance against universal error. The prophecy ends with ultimate restoration. Though humans falter, divine purpose doesn't. The covenant inscribed in stars and seasons outlasts human weakness. Time itself leads back to harmony between heaven and earth. The final generations. As the angel's voice expands more intense, he lifts the veil on time's final chapters. The story moves beyond Israel's cycles of faith and failure to glimpse creation's culmination. These passages shimmer with apocalyptic hope. History possesses a direction, an ending, a purpose. Time itself will fold back toward its beginning. The human lifespan, shortened after Eden's loss, will gradually lengthen again. Children born in these final days will grow gray-haired in wisdom, seeing 1,000 years pass. Disease will retreat. The earth will yield abundance without painful labor. And in those days, children will commence to study the laws and to seek the commandments and to return to the path of righteousness. Behind these earthly changes, vast movements unfold in spiritual realms. Angelic hosts assemble like armies preparing for final battle. Mastema's powers weaken as light increases across the world. The careful barriers between heaven and earth, maintained since Adam's exile from Eden, grow thin. These aren't instant changes, but gradual transformations across generations. Jubilees perceives redemption, working through natural processes, not sudden rupture. Families teach forgotten wisdom. Communities rebuild covenant practices. The authentic calendar spreads slowly, realigning human activity with celestial harmony. Yet, alongside this gentle restoration arrives judgment. Those who cling to false time and corrupt practices confront exclusion from the renewed world. The angel speaks of separation between faithful and unfaithful, between those who kept covenant memory alive and those who abandoned it. And the days shall commence to grow many and increase among the children of men, till their days draw near to 1,000 years, as it was before. Most remarkable is how this vision differs from later apocalyptic writings. There's no universal war, no destroying fire, no fresh heaven and earth. Instead, creation heals from within. The same sun and moon that witnessed Eden's morning will perceive paradise restored. The same land promised to Abraham welcomes his children home. The same law given at Sinai guides final generations. For listeners seeking ancient wisdom, this offers profound perspective on time itself. History isn't meaningless cycle or straight-line progress, but spiral return to first truths. The future holds not alien wonders, but recovery of what was lost. The golden age lies not just behind, but ahead. In these final scenes, the boundaries between story and prophecy blur. The angel presents Moses these approaching days as if they've already happened, recorded on heaven's tablets before creation commenced. From divine perspective, the last generation already exists alongside the first. The account ends not with detailed predictions, but with quiet confidence. The pattern established in stars and seasons cannot fail. The covenant inscribed in heaven will find fulfillment on earth. Time itself serves divine purpose, carrying creation home. Jubilees disappears. After guiding Israel for centuries, the Book of Jubilees faded from Jewish life like morning mist. Once revered alongside Torah in some communities, it slipped from canon to curiosity. This vanishing wasn't sudden, but gradual eclipse as rabbinic Judaism took shape after Jerusalem's fall. The rabbis who rebuilt Jewish life after the temple's destruction confronted urgent questions. How could covenant continue without sacrifice? How could holy time be marked without priests? Their answers shaped a more flexible, portable faith, one where prayer replaced offering, where study transformed into highest worship. In this fresh world, Jubilee's rigid calendar appeared impractical. Its insistence that Sabbaths must always fall on the same dates of the year clashed with rabbinic calculations. Its assertion that patriarchs observed the full law before Sinai undermined fresh interpretations. Most troubling, its heavenly tablets left little room for the oral Torah that rabbis perceived as their special trust. And there was of old a strife on Mount Zion concerning the Sabbath day because they had forgotten the covenant and profaned the Sabbath. The Dead Sea community that treasured Jubilees didn't survive to champion its vision. Jerusalem's temples, both the official one and the Qumran sect's spiritual claim, lay in ruins. The calendar wars that once sparked passionate debate lost urgency in a world without altar fire. Meanwhile, early Christianity confronted its own questions about Jewish law and time. Some groups might have treasured Jubilees briefly. Echoes of its unique stories emerge in early Christian writings. But as the fresh faith spread among non-Jews, complicated calendar rules appeared less vital than simple gospel. The Eastern churches proved more welcoming. In Ethiopia especially, Jubilees found lasting home. There, it remains canonical scripture to this day, one of the few places where its vision of time and law still shapes religious life. Ethiopian Christians preserved what others discarded, keeping alive this ancient voice. What caused this book's rejection in most Jewish and Christian circles? Perhaps its unbending calendar, impossible to observe in scattered communities. Perhaps its extreme purity concerns, difficult in daily life. Or perhaps its assertion to angelic authority, challenging human leaders. More probably, Jubilees simply represented a road not taken, its vision of unchanging law inscribed before creation and binding even angels offered certainty but limited growth. The rabbinic path, where each generation interprets tradition anew, proved more adaptable to changing times. For 2,000 years, Jubilees slumbered in Ethiopian manuscripts, read only by scholars of obscure manuscripts. Most Western Bibles omitted it entirely. Most religious communities forgot it existed. The book that asserted to hold time's secrets transformed into itself a victim of time's passage until desert caves yielded their treasures and ancient voices spoke again. Ethiopia keeps the flame. In the highlands of East Africa, where ancient churches dot the landscape and time appears to stand still, a remarkable thing transpired. The Book of Jubilees never disappeared. While the rest of the world forgot this strange manuscript, Ethiopia kept it close, treating it as sacred scripture for nearly 2,000 years. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church stands alone among Christian traditions in preserving Jubilees as canonical scripture. Their Bible, unlike any other in the world, includes this mysterious manuscript alongside other books most Christians have never encountered. When you visit an Ethiopian church today and ask to perceive their scriptures, you'll find Jubilees there, quietly waiting as if it had never been lost at all. Why did Ethiopia embrace what others rejected? The explanation lies partially in their isolation from the theological debates that shaped Western Christianity. Cut off from Rome and Constantinople by geography and Islamic expansion, Ethiopian Christianity developed its own path, preserving ancient traditions that vanished elsewhere. But there's more to this story than simple isolation. Ethiopian Christians found in Jubilees something that spoke profoundly to their understanding of faith and time. The book's focus on sacred calendars, pure worship, and angelic oversight resonated with Ethiopian spiritual sensibilities. Its strict rules about purity and its universal vision of history matched how Ethiopian Christians perceived the world. In Ethiopian tradition, Jubilees isn't called by that name. They know it as the Little Genesis, or sometimes the Book of Division. These names hint at how they comprehended its purpose, as a deeper, more detailed reading of creation and the patriarchs, with special attention to how time itself was divided and assigned. The survival of Jubilees in Ethiopia connects to another treasured manuscript, the Kebra Nagast, or Glory of Kings. This uniquely Ethiopian work recounts the story of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, asserting that their son Menelik transported the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia. The Kebra Nagast shares with Jubilees a concern for divine election, sacred objects, and an unbroken chain linking heaven to earth. Ethiopian Orthodox priests still read from Jubilees during certain ceremonies, especially those marking transitions in time, New Year's, seasonal changes, and births. When they do, they continue a tradition that has remained unbroken since ancient days, while everywhere else the book was forgotten or forbidden. In the remote monasteries of Lake Tana and the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, manuscripts of Jubilees have been carefully copied for centuries. Some of these handwritten manuscripts are works of stunning beauty, with colorful illustrations presenting angels delivering the heavenly tablets to Moses. The Ethiopian scribes, who preserved these copies frequently, didn't know they were keeping alive something that had vanished from the rest of Christianity. Ethiopia's preservation of Jubilees offers us a glimpse into an alternate history, one where this book wasn't rejected but treasured as divine revelation. In Ethiopian eyes, Jubilees isn't strange or heretical. It's simply part of God's Word, offering insights into heaven's perspective on time, purity, and covenant. When Western scholars finally rediscovered Jubilees in the 19th century, they were amazed to find it still alive in Ethiopia. The first modern translations arrived not from ancient fragments, but from living Ethiopian manuscripts. These manuscripts had been lovingly maintained for generations, their pages worn smooth by the fingers of priests who never doubted their sacred worth. Ethiopia's devotion to Jubilees reminds us that religious history isn't a simple story of progress or consensus. It's also about what different communities choose to remember and what they decide matters. In the cool mountain air of the Ethiopian highlands, Jubilees never lost its voice or its authority. It continued to speak even when the rest of the world had stopped listening. For the faithful in Ethiopia, the angels of Jubilees still observe over sacred time. The heavenly tablets still record divine laws, and the careful measuring of days according to God's calendar still matters profoundly. In this one corner of the world, Jubilees never needed to be rediscovered because it had never been lost in the first place. Jubilees at Qumran. The year was 1947. A young Bedouin shepherd tossed a stone into a cave near the Dead Sea and heard something crack. That unexpected sound led to one of the greatest archaeological finds of all time, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Hidden in clay jars and forgotten for 2,000 years, these ancient manuscripts would revolutionize our understanding of early Judaism. And among the most cherished writings of this desert community was our mysterious book, Jubilees. At Qumran, where a community of Jewish sectarians existed in the desert awaiting the end times, Jubilees wasn't a forgotten oddity. It was central to their worldview. Archaeologists have discovered more copies of Jubilees at Qumran than almost any other non-biblical manuscript. These people didn't just read Jubilees, they lived by it. The Qumran community, frequently identified with the ancient Jewish group called the Essenes, had separated themselves from mainstream Jewish life. They believed the Jerusalem temple had been corrupted and that authentic worship could only happen in their desert settlement. What drew them to Jubilees was its vision of flawless, divinely ordained time. The book's 364-day solar calendar transformed into the heartbeat of their communal life. This calendar wasn't just a way to mark days, it was a religious statement. By following Jubilees' calendar, rather than the lunar calendar employed in Jerusalem, the Qumran community was declaring the temple authorities illegitimate. In their view, Jerusalem had fallen under the sway of false timekeeping, breaking covenant with heaven's ordained rhythms. Every festival, every Sabbath at Qumran observed Jubilees' timetable. Community members believed that by aligning themselves with this heavenly calendar, they were joining the angels in flawless worship. When they prayed or offered sacrifices, they did so at precisely the moments when the gates of heaven stood open, according to Jubilees' universal timetable. Fragments of Jubilees discovered in the caves reveal how carefully these manuscripts were copied. Some scrolls present signs of frequent handling, their edges worn thin by fingers that turned these pages again and again. Other religious writings discovered at Qumran, like the Community Rule and the War Scroll, echo Jubilees' themes of universal dualism, angelic oversight, and predetermined history. The Qumran calendar reveals just how seriously they took Jubilees. Their year consisted of exactly 52 weeks, a flawless 364 days. Each season possessed 3 months of 30 days, plus 1 extra day at the season's end. This flawless symmetry meant festivals always fell on the same day of the week, year after year. Sunday was always holy, Wednesday was always sacred. Time itself transformed into a form of worship. For the Qumran community, this wasn't just about possessing a reliable calendar. It was about being in sync with heaven. They believed that when they celebrated Passover or the Day of Atonement on different days than Jerusalem did, they were the ones getting it right. The angels, they were certain, were celebrating alongside them, while the corrupt priests in Jerusalem had fallen out of step with universal time. In the dry desert air, these scrolls survived for 2 millennia, waiting to tell us their story. When scholars finally pieced together the fragments, they realized that what they were perceiving was nothing less than a calendrical war, a battle over who controlled sacred time. Jubilees stood at the center of this conflict, offering divine authority to those who felt the mainstream had lost its way. What's remarkable about the Qumran manuscripts is how they reveal a community that didn't just read Jubilees as an interesting historical document. They perceived it as living scripture, more authoritative in some ways than parts of the Torah itself. The book's strict rules about purity, its emphasis on predestined occurrences, and its focus on angelic guidance transformed into pillars of daily life by the Dead Sea. The discovery of Jubilees at Qumran transformed how scholars comprehended both the book and the community. Here was proof that Jubilees wasn't a marginal manuscript, but a central one for at least some ancient Jews. The multiple copies, carefully preserved, spoke to its importance. For the people who hid these scrolls, Jubilees wasn't just a book. It was a way of life, a connection to heaven's flawless order in a world they perceived as increasingly chaotic. In the silence of the Judean desert, where stars shine with unusual clarity, the Qumran community existed by Jubilees' universal clock. They believed themselves to be the authentic Israel, the remnant keeping faith while others strayed. And central to that faith was the conviction that time itself was sacred. Not just how you employed it, but how you counted it. In the end, they hid their precious scrolls, perhaps hoping someone in the future would comprehend what they had attempted to preserve. The rebellion of the scholars. For centuries, Jubilees slept in the dust, forgotten by almost everyone. Then arrived the age of modern scholarship, when curious minds commenced to search for lost voices from the past. In the mid-19th century, European travelers to Ethiopia brought back strange manuscripts, among them copies of a book most Western scholars had never encountered. The Book of Jubilees had re-entered the academic world. At first, these scholars didn't know what to make of this strange manuscript. Was it ancient or medieval? Jewish or Christian, original or derivative? The hunt for answers sparked a quiet revolution in how we comprehend the world that gave birth to both Judaism and Christianity. What commenced as curiosity about an odd manuscript transformed into a full-scale reassessment of religious history. German scholar August Dillmann published the first translation of Jubilees in 1850. Working from Ethiopian manuscripts, his work opened the floodgates. Soon, scholars across Europe were debating the origins and meaning of this rediscovered book. Each fresh translation into Latin, English, French, and other languages brought fresh insights and questions. Dating Jubilees proved especially challenging. The book presents itself as older than Genesis, dictated by angels to Moses, yet its content demonstrates awareness of occurrences and ideas from much later periods. Scholars found themselves tracking subtle clues, references to historical occurrences, linguistic patterns, theological concepts that emerged at particular times. It was like attempting to solve a puzzle where many pieces were still missing. By the early 20th century, most researchers had settled on the 2nd century before the Common Era as the probable time of composition. This positioned Jubilees in a crucial period when Jewish identity was being hotly contested. The Maccabean revolt against Greek influence had just succeeded, and different Jewish groups were competing to define what faithful living should look like. Jubilees, with its strict rules and universal vision, was part of this struggle. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947 transformed everything. Finding multiple copies of Jubilees at Qumran confirmed both its antiquity and its importance. Carbon dating of the scrolls proved that Jubilees existed much earlier than some had thought. The scholarly world had to reckon with the reality that this wasn't a fringe manuscript, but a central one for at least some ancient Jews. Fresh questions emerged. Who wrote Jubilees and why? Some scholars pointed to the book's priestly concerns, suggesting it arrived from temple circles. Others noted its similarities to apocalyptic literature, connecting it to visionary groups on Judaism's margins. Still others perceived links to the emerging Pharisaic movement with its focus on applying Torah to daily life. The debate over Jubilees' origin transformed into part of a larger scholarly rebellion against old ways of comprehending ancient Judaism. For generations, scholars had viewed ancient Jewish thought through the lens of later rabbinic Judaism, assuming a relatively straight line of development. Jubilees helped shatter this oversimplified picture, revealing a world of competing Jewish voices, each with their own vision of covenant life. By the late 20th century, Jubilees had moved from obscurity to prominence in the study of Second Temple Judaism. Whole conferences were devoted to its content. Doctoral dissertations explored its themes. Fresh translations emerged regularly, each attempting to capture its distinctive voice more accurately. A book once dismissed as a curious footnote had transformed into central to comprehending the world that produced both Rabbinic Judaism and early Christianity. Perhaps the most heated debate centered on what scholars called pseudepigrapha, ancient manuscripts written in the name of revered figures from the past. Jubilees asserts Moses as its receiver, though it was composed centuries after him. Some researchers dismissed such works as forgeries, while others argued they represented a different understanding of authorship, where channeling the spirit of an ancient figure was more important than historical accuracy. Through all these scholarly debates, something remarkable transpired. Jubilees commenced to speak again after centuries of silence. Its distinctive voice, concerned with exact timekeeping, universal order, and strict boundaries, added a crucial perspective to our understanding of the fertile, chaotic period that gave birth to the religious traditions that still shape our world. Today's scholars approach Jubilees with more nuance than their predecessors, perceiving it not as a bizarre deviation, but as a witness to the rich diversity of ancient Jewish thought. The book that once appeared so strange now helps us perceive how varied and vibrant Judaism was in the centuries before rabbinic tradition transformed into dominant. And in recovering Jubilees, modern scholarship didn't just find a lost manuscript, it rediscovered a lost world. Jubilees and the Book of Enoch. Deep in the heart of Jubilees lies a surprising connection, a bridge to another mysterious manuscript called the Book of Enoch. These two ancient works, both excluded from most biblical canons, share a special relationship. They speak the same unusual language of angels, universal secrets, and heavenly tablets. They recount overlapping stories about watchers, giants, and divine judgment. And together they reveal a forgotten strand of Jewish belief that once flourished but was later pushed aside. Enoch emerges in Genesis as an almost footnote, a man who walked with God and was no more, for God took him. This cryptic reference transforms in the Book of Enoch into a full-blown universal journey. Enoch travels through heaven's levels, witnesses the punishment of fallen angels, and returns with hidden knowledge. Jubilees takes this expanded story of Enoch and weaves it seamlessly into its retelling of Genesis, providing him a central role as the first human to comprehend heaven's calendars. In Jubilees, Enoch transforms into the first man to fully grasp sacred time. He doesn't just observe the heavenly cycles, he records them, transforming into the original astronomer-priest. The book informs us he was the first among men who acquired writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who inscribed down in a book the signs of heaven according to their months. This vision of Enoch as universal secretary resonates throughout the Book of Enoch itself. Both manuscripts share a fascination with a particular group of angels called Watchers. In their telling, these heavenly beings were assigned to observe over humanity, but fell from grace when they desired human women. Their illicit unions produced giants who brought violence and chaos to the earth. While Genesis merely hints at this story, both Enoch and Jubilees expand it dramatically, making it central to comprehending why the flood had to arrive. The shared cosmology of these books reveals a world where angels and demons actively shape human history. Both manuscripts describe an angel named Azazel or Asael, who instructs forbidden knowledge to humans, metalwork, weapon-making, cosmetics, and other arts that lead people away from simple piety. Both also feature an angel named Mastema, a Satangent-like figure who accuses humans before God and tests their faithfulness. Perhaps most remarkable is how both books describe time and history as predetermined, inscribed on heavenly tablets long before occurrences unfold on earth. In this view, nothing happens by chance. Each occurrence, each turn in human affairs, follows a script already inscribed in heaven. This deterministic vision offers both comfort and challenge. Comfort that God remains in control, challenge in the limited space it leaves for human freedom. Modern scholars have coined the term Enochic Judaism to describe the worldview these manuscripts represent. This perspective emphasizes universal dualism, angelic revelation, astronomical precision, and predetermined history. It differs in key ways from the Judaism that eventually transformed into dominant after the destruction of the temple in 70 CE. In Enochic Judaism, the temple calendar is secondary to heaven's flawless timetable, and Moses shares authority with other revealers like Enoch. The relationship between Jubilees and Enoch raises fascinating questions about influence and origins. Did one borrow from the other? Did both draw on older traditions now lost to us? Were they products of the same community? Scholars continue to debate these questions, but most agree that these manuscripts represent a shared intellectual world, one where heaven's secrets were available to those with the wisdom to receive them. Both books demonstrate special interest in a flawlessly ordered universe, where everything possesses its place in time. Their angels aren't just messengers, but universal administrators, each with specific duties in maintaining world order. Their demons aren't just tempters, but systematic opponents of divine harmony. And their humans aren't just moral agents, but players in a universal drama whose script was inscribed before time commenced. This shared vision helps clarify why both books eventually fell out of favor with Rabbinic Judaism and most of Christianity. Their elaborate angelology, their determinism, and their assertions to revelation beyond the Torah didn't fit well with emerging orthodoxies. As Judaism rebuilt itself after the temple's destruction and as Christianity defined its boundaries, manuscripts like Jubilees and Enoch were increasingly viewed with suspicion. Yet these books never fully disappeared. They survived in places like Ethiopia and in fragments hidden in desert caves. Their ideas resonated in later mystical traditions, in apocalyptic movements, and in folk beliefs about angels and demons. Even when officially excluded, their universal vision continued to speak to people drawn to a more mystical, determined understanding of time and history. Today, reading Jubilees alongside Enoch helps us recover this lost strand of ancient thought, a perspective that perceives human history as deeply embedded in universal patterns, where angels and demons battle over human destiny, and where heaven's flawless order stands as the model for life on earth. Together, they remind us that the religious world that produced both Judaism and Christianity was far more diverse and complex than later traditions frequently acknowledged. Jubilees and the Gospels. When the first followers of Jesus commenced writing down his story, they weren't creating something entirely fresh. They were adding to an ongoing conversation about God's work in history. And though they might not have known it, some of the ideas they wove into their Gospels resonated themes from the Book of Jubilees. These quiet connections help us perceive how early Christian thought expanded from the rich soil of diverse Jewish traditions. The Gospel writers never directly quote Jubilees, yet their work demonstrates traces of similar concerns about sacred time, angelic guidance, universal conflict, and the fulfillment of ages-old plans. These parallels don't mean the Gospel authors necessarily read Jubilees. Rather, they suggest that both Jubilees and the Gospels drew from shared streams of Jewish thought that were flowing in the first century. Consider how Matthew commences his Gospel with a carefully structured genealogy, separating history into 3 sets of 14 generations. This isn't just a family tree. It's a statement about time possessing meaningful patterns. The author perceives Jesus arriving at precisely the right moment in a divinely orchestrated timeline. This concern with sacred chronology feels very much like Jubilees, where every significant occurrence happens at its designated time according to heaven's calendar. Luke's Gospel opens with angelic announcements to Zechariah and Mary, heavenly messengers bringing news of divine plans unfolding. Throughout Luke, angels emerge at pivotal moments, guiding, revealing, protecting. This robust angelology, where heavenly beings actively participate in human affairs, mirrors Jubilees' world, where angels constantly oversee earthly occurrences. Perhaps the most remarkable parallel arrives in the temptation narratives found in Matthew and Luke. Here, Jesus is led into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan, or as some manuscripts express it, the tempter. In Jubilees, the chief adversary isn't named Satan, but Mastema, a figure who tests humans and acts as their accuser before God. Both manuscripts present a vision of universal testing, where faithfulness must be proven through resistance to powerful temptation. The Gospel of John opens with a prologue about the word logos that existed in the beginning and through which all things were fashioned. While this possesses clear connections to Greek philosophy, it also resonates with Jubilees' description of creation through divine speech and its interest in what existed before the physical world. Both manuscripts look beyond Genesis to what arrived before in the beginning. Jesus' arguments about Sabbath observance in the Gospels take on fresh depth when read alongside Jubilees. When he declares the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, he's engaging with debates about Sabbath strictness that were already happening in manuscripts like Jubilees, which possesses some of the most detailed Sabbath regulations in ancient Jewish literature. The Gospel portrayals of Jesus celebrating Jewish festivals, Passover, tabernacles, dedication, demonstrate him engaging with the sacred calendar that was so central to Jubilees. When John's Gospel emphasizes that certain occurrences happen during specific festivals, it's tapping into the same sensitivity to sacred timing that permeates Jubilees. Even the Gospel emphasis on Jesus as fulfilling Scripture follows a pattern similar to how Jubilees presents occurrences as fulfilling what was inscribed on heavenly tablets. Both perceive history as the unfolding of what was already determined, though the Gospels position more emphasis on human response within that unfolding plan. These parallels don't mean early Christians were secret readers of Jubilees. Rather, they suggest that the religious world that produced both Jubilees and early Christianity shared certain concerns about time, purity, universal conflict, and divine planning. Ideas that emerge in Jubilees weren't isolated oddities, but part of the intellectual atmosphere that early Christians breathed. Comprehending these connections helps us perceive the Gospels not as complete breaks from Jewish tradition, but as creative reinterpretations within it. The early followers of Jesus weren't rejecting Jewish ideas, but reshaping them around their experience of him. And some of the ideas they were reshaping had already found expression in manuscripts like Jubilees. The subtle resonances between Jubilees and the Gospels remind us that boundaries between religious groups were more fluid than we frequently imagine. Ideas flowed back and forth between different Jewish communities. Concepts that appeared distinctive to one group frequently emerged in modified form among others. The Gospel writers drew from this common pool of ideas, even as they created something fresh. For modern readers, these connections offer a richer understanding of both manuscripts. Jubilees helps us perceive the Jewish thought world that shaped early Christianity, and the Gospels demonstrate how ancient ideas could be reimagined in light of fresh experiences. Together, they reveal the complex, creative dialogue that has always characterized religious thought. In the end, perhaps what links Jubilees and the Gospels most profoundly is their shared conviction that human history isn't random. Both perceive time as meaningful, moving toward fulfillment of divine purposes. Both believe heaven and earth are connected by more than occasional miracles. And both trust that behind the chaos of human occurrences lies a pattern, a script inscribed by the same hand that created the stars. Jubilees and modern fundamentalism. In tucked-away corners of our world, hidden from mainstream view, small groups of believers have rediscovered the Book of Jubilees. They've dusted off its ancient pages and found something that speaks to their hearts. These are folks who feel the modern world has gone astray, who long for clear rules and divine order in a chaotic time. What draws them to this ancient manuscript? For many, it's the precision. Jubilees offers what many religious manuscripts don't: exact dates, specific rules, and a universal timetable. In a world where truth appears slippery, Jubilees feels solid. It maps out history from start to finish with heavenly authority. Some groups have even rebuilt their lives around the 364-day calendar. They mark their days not by our modern calendar, but by the one they believe God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai. Each week flows flawlessly, 52 weeks of exactly 7 days each. The sun, not the moon, guides their holy days. They perceive our modern calendars as tools of confusion, created to pull us from divine rhythms. The world wants you lost in time, one leader informed his followers. But God wants you synchronized with heaven. These communities frequently keep to themselves. They construct farms away from cities, raise children in the old ways, and wait for signs from above. They observe the skies not just for weather, but for universal messages. The stars aren't just distant suns to them. They're heavenly writing, telling stories only the faithful can read. What makes Jubilees so appealing to these groups isn't just its rules, but its warnings. The book speaks of how humans strayed from God's flawless order. It recounts of angels keeping records of our failings. For those who feel the modern world has fallen from grace, these passages ring true. Some communities take this further, perceiving hidden patterns in world occurrences that match Jubilees' prophecies. Wars, disasters, and social changes aren't random to them, but follow the script inscribed ages ago. They track these occurrences, noting how they align with the book's timeline. Each match strengthens their faith. The internet has helped these groups find each other. Once isolated, they now share interpretations and insights across continents. Online forums buzz with discussions about angelic hierarchies and heavenly tablets. Videos clarify how to observe the authentic calendar. What was once knowledge held by a few has spread to many. Not all who embrace Jubilees exist apart from society. Some hold regular jobs and raise families in suburbs while quietly observing the book's teachings. They might celebrate different holy days than their neighbors or avoid certain foods on specific dates. From the outside, their lives look ordinary, but their inner worlds operate on heavenly time. Critics worry about these movements. They point to the book's rigid rules and harsh judgments. Some perceive unhealthy control, disguised as divine order. When leaders assert to comprehend God's timetable, followers sometimes make choices that harm themselves or others. Several groups have made failed predictions about the end times, leaving members devastated. Yet many find genuine peace in existing by Jubilees' code. They speak of feeling aligned with something greater than themselves. Daily life gains meaning when each moment connects to universal patterns. Even simple acts like consuming or resting transform into sacred when done according to heavenly law. One woman who matured in such a community remembered, "We knew exactly who we were and where we belonged in God's plan. The world outside appeared lost, making up rules as they went along. We possessed certainty." What truly drives this renewed interest in Jubilees isn't just religious fervor, but a human need for meaning. In a world that transforms faster each day, where traditions fade and fresh technologies reshape how we exist, Jubilees offers an anchor. Its message is clear: there is a plan, there are rules, and heaven is observing. Whether perceived as fringe believers or faithful keepers of ancient wisdom, these communities remind us how powerful old stories remain. They demonstrate how a manuscript lost for centuries can find fresh life in modern hearts. The Book of Jubilees, once forgotten, now shapes lives again, proving that sacred words never truly perish. They just wait to be rediscovered. The God who keeps time. Imagine the universe as a vast clock, its gears turning with flawless precision. Stars sweep across the night sky. Seasons transform without fail, and life follows its endless cycle of birth and death. At the center of this universal timepiece stands a watchmaker, the God of Jubilees. This isn't the distant creator who sets the world spinning and steps away, nor is it the emotional, sometimes angry deity of later scriptures. The God revealed in the Book of Jubilees is the master of moments, the keeper of days, the one who counts each sunset and sunrise with careful attention. When we read Genesis, we find a God who creates with words. "Let there be light," he declares, and light emerges. But in Jubilees, the same God doesn't just create, he schedules. Each element of creation arrives at its designated time, marked on a divine calendar. Animals, plants, humans, all make their entrance according to a script inscribed before time commenced. For thus it is engraved and ordained on the heavenly tablets. Jubilees informs us again and again. These tablets, mentioned over 30 times in the manuscript, are God's master plan, not just for what will happen, but when it must occur. What kind of deity counts days with such care? What does it mean to worship a God who tracks time? For the writers of Jubilees, this precision wasn't cold or mechanical, it was deeply reassuring. In an ancient world where life felt chaotic and empires rose and fell without warning, the idea of a God who kept flawless time meant nothing happened by chance. History wasn't random, but unfolded according to plan. Even suffering possessed its season, its marked place in the divine timetable. This God notices when we step outside his schedule. The manuscript warns repeatedly about observing holy days at the incorrect time, not just as a mistake, but as a serious offense. To observe a different calendar isn't just inconvenient. It means stepping outside God's ordained rhythm for human life. He who transforms the days will be cut off, warns the angelic voice. To observe the incorrect calendar is to exist in a different reality than the one God created. Yet this timekeeper God isn't distant. He walks with Adam in Eden's garden. He speaks directly to Noah, Abraham, and Moses. He fashions covenants, promises that span generations. The God of Jubilees is intimately involved with human affairs while maintaining universal order. This balance between closeness and order, between love and law, speaks to something deep in human hearts. We long for both freedom and structure, for divine love and universal meaning. The God of Jubilees offers both, though weighted heavily toward order. What would it mean to exist with such a God observing over your days? To believe each sunrise isn't just another day, but a specific day marked in heaven's ledger. For many ancient believers, this view brought comfort through structure. Their lives gained meaning by connecting to heaven's timeline. Nothing was random, everything possessed purpose. Even today, many find peace in structured religious time. The call to prayer 5 times daily, the Sabbath rest, the yearly round of holy days. These practices connect human lives to something greater. They transform ordinary moments into sacred time. The modern world frequently informs us time is money, something to spend or save, to use efficiently. We race against the clock, attempting to pack more into each hour. Jubilees offers a different vision, time as a gift, a creation as precious as the earth itself. Each day follows divine design. Perhaps that's why this ancient vision continues to speak to us. In our rushed lives, the idea of divine order brings comfort. The God who counts days reminds us each moment matters. Whether we believe in heavenly tablets or not, this message touches something in our souls. The ticking clock, the transforming seasons, the rhythm of breath, all hint at patterns beyond our making. The Book of Jubilees simply provides these patterns a name, a purpose, and positions them in the hands of a God who not only creates, but keeps flawless time. The angels are observing. Look up at the sky tonight. According to the Book of Jubilees, you're not alone in your observing. Eyes gaze back. Not just stars, but angels assigned to every nation, every natural force, every human choice. They hover unseen, keeping records of all we accomplish. This network of heavenly watchers forms one of Jubilee's most remarkable features. Unlike the sparse angel appearances in Genesis, Jubilees portrays a universe buzzing with spiritual beings. They're not just messengers, but active agents in creation, overseers of nature, and most troubling, celestial spies. And he appointed spirits to rule over all. the manuscript clarifies, listing angels over fire, wind, clouds, darkness, snow, hail, frost, even over the sounds that thunder fashions. Nothing in nature operates without angelic direction. The world isn't a machine running on natural laws, but a living system managed by conscious beings. These angels don't just manage nature, they observe humans closely. Every good deed, every sin goes into their books. Nothing escapes their notice. They report directly to God, creating a celestial surveillance system that spans the globe. For the original readers, this vision brought both comfort and fear. Comfort in knowing the world wasn't chaos, but carefully managed. Fear in realizing every action possessed a witness, every sin a record keeper. But these angels aren't just passive observers. Some actively help humans stay on the right path. When Abraham rejects idol worship, angels guide him. When Noah needs to construct the ark, heavenly beings provide instructions. The faithful never walk alone. Other angels bring trouble. Chief among these is Mastema, Jubilees' stand-in for Satan. He leads forces that tempt humans away from God's law. Unlike the subtle serpent in Genesis, Mastema operates openly, even challenging God directly. He requests permission to test humans, arguing they need to prove their faithfulness. This universal drama, angels of light versus angels of darkness, with humans caught in between, creates a different kind of spiritual landscape than Genesis presents. Humans aren't making free choices in a neutral world, but navigating a battlefield between opposing spiritual forces. What does this mean for human freedom? If angels monitor our every move and demons actively work to trip us up, how much choice do we genuinely possess? Jubilees doesn't fully answer this question, but it suggests our choices matter precisely because they're being recorded. In some ways, this angelic surveillance system feels unnervingly modern. We exist in a world of security cameras and internet tracking and data collection. Our phones log our movements. Our online activities generate profiles. Privacy feels increasingly rare. Jubilees described a watched world thousands of years before technology made it possible. Some scholars perceive this emphasis on angelic observing as a tool for social control. If people believe invisible beings record their every action, they might behave better even when human authorities aren't observing. The angels transform into the ultimate enforcement mechanism for religious law, more effective than any human police force. This interpretation views Jubilees as somewhat dystopian, a world where freedom shrinks under constant observation. The heavenly tablets don't just record history, they control it. Humans transform into actors following a script rather than writers of their own stories. Yet many believers find comfort in this vision. The angels aren't just observing to catch mistakes, but to guide and protect. Their presence means we're never truly alone, never forgotten by heaven. Even in our darkest moments, celestial beings stand nearby, ready to help if we ask. The angels of the presence and the angels of sanctification, Jubilees' highest angelic orders, don't just record human failings, but human prayers. They transport our hopes heavenward, ensuring God hears every whispered request. This balance between comfort and control, between guidance and surveillance, provides Jubilees its unique spiritual flavor. Its universe feels more crowded than Genesis, more structured, more watched. Whether this vision brings peace or anxiety depends largely on how we feel about being perceived. In our age of privacy concerns and data collection, perhaps Jubilees speaks with fresh relevance. Its message that nothing is truly hidden, that our actions possess witnesses, might serve as either warning or comfort. The angels are observing. The question is, how does that make you feel? Time is a test. Time doesn't just pass in the Book of Jubilees, it tests us. Each day offers a choice. Will we align with heaven's rhythm or follow our own beat? Will we honor God's timetable or create our own calendar? These aren't just scheduling decisions, but spiritual crossroads. This view transforms ordinary days into moments of deep meaning. Tuesday isn't just Tuesday, it's the third day of the week God established at creation. A full moon isn't just a celestial occurrence. It's a potential trap, tempting believers to observe lunar calendars instead of the divine solar year. For the writers of Jubilees, getting the calendar right wasn't just about marking days correctly, it was about staying in step with heaven itself. Following the incorrect calendar meant existing in a different reality than the one God created, a dangerous spiritual territory where angels couldn't fully protect you. For there will be those who will make observations of the moon, the manuscript warns, and this will disturb the seasons and make the years shorter. This isn't just astronomy, but apostasy, a turning away from divine order. The stakes couldn't be higher. Time itself transforms into a test of faith, separating authentic believers from those who compromise. Those who pass this test prove themselves worthy of divine favor. Those who fail risk joining the ranks of the fallen, cut off from heaven's protection. This pressure creates a specific kind of spiritual psychology, one where believers exist with constant awareness of time's sacred nature. Every sunset, every Sabbath, every festival transforms into a chance to demonstrate faithfulness. The calendar isn't just a tool, but a spiritual discipline. Imagine existing this way, waking each morning aware that today has been marked in heaven's tablets since before creation. Your alignment with universal time proves your devotion. Each holy day observed correctly brings you closer to angelic harmony. Each festival missed or marked at the incorrect time pulls you toward chaos. For many believers, this framework brought comfort through structure. Human life gained meaning by connecting to eternal patterns. Daily routines weren't just habits, but sacred acts linking earth to heaven. Time wasn't something that happened to you, but something you participated in mindfully. Modern psychology might perceive something different here, the anxiety of perfectionism, the weight of constant testing. When every day transforms into a pass-fail spiritual exam, where's the room for grace? When calendar keeping determines salvation, what happens to those who make honest mistakes? Jubilees doesn't ignore these concerns entirely. It acknowledges human weakness while insisting on divine standards. The patriarchs in its stories sometimes fail God's tests, yet receive second chances. Time tests humans, but also teaches them, providing opportunities to learn and expand. This tension between rigid universal order and human frailty provides Jubilees its unique spiritual flavor. It offers both the comfort of divine structure and the challenge of living up to it. Time transforms into both gift and burden, both blessing and trial. Perhaps that's why the book resonated with communities feeling pressured by outside cultures. For Jews existing under Greek or Roman influence, where foreign calendars threatened traditional practices, Jubilees offered universal reassurance. Their calendar wasn't just one option among many, but heaven's own rhythm. Defending it meant defending reality itself. Many spiritual traditions share this view of time as a testing ground. From Buddhist mindfulness to Muslim prayer schedules, from Jewish Sabbath observance to Christian liturgical years, religious time creates space for spiritual expansion. These practices transform clock time into soul time, turning passing hours into opportunities for transformation. The Book of Jubilees simply takes this common insight to universal levels. Time doesn't just test our attention or discipline, but our very place in God's order. Each tick of the clock transforms into a heartbeat of faith. Whether we share this exact view or not, Jubilees reminds us that how we spend our days matters profoundly. Time isn't just something that passes, but something we can fill with meaning. Each moment offers choices that shape who we transform into. In a world obsessed with saving time, spending time, and killing time, Jubilees suggests something different. Sanctifying time, making each day count not by what we accomplish, but by how we align with something greater than ourselves. What if Jubilees was right? The sun slips below the horizon, marking another day complete. According to the Book of Jubilees, this sunset isn't just a natural occurrence, but a turning page in heaven's universal calendar. Another day recorded, another step closer to the end of time's magnificent story. We've journeyed far with this ancient manuscript, exploring its strange angels, its exact timelines, its vision of a universe operated like flawless clockwork. Now we reach the moment for quiet reflection. What if Jubilees was right? Not necessarily in every detail, not in its rigid calendar or its harsh judgments, but in its core insight. That time unfolds according to a plan, that history possesses direction, that our days fit into patterns we didn't create, but can discover. Modern science informs us the universe operates on laws. Gravity pulls, light travels, atoms bond in predictable ways. Is it so strange to imagine these physical laws mirror deeper patterns, that time itself follows a script inscribed at creation? The writers of Jubilees believed the world makes sense, not just physically, but morally and spiritually. Occurrences don't happen randomly, but fulfill purposes established long ago. Human lives aren't meaningless, but play roles in a universal drama. History isn't just one thing after another, but a story with beginning, middle, and end. This view offers comfort in troubled times. When the world appears chaotic, when violence and suffering seem random, Jubilees whispers, there is a plan. Even if we can't perceive it clearly, even if we don't comprehend its twists and turns, the story possesses an author who knows where it's heading. Of course, this comfort arrives with challenges. If time operates on rails laid by divine will, what happens to human freedom? If angels record our every move according to heavenly expectations, how much choice do we genuinely possess? Jubilees doesn't fully resolve this tension. It presents humans making authentic choices, while also suggesting these choices fulfill ancient prophecies. Free will and divine plan somehow coexist, though the book leans heavily toward destiny over freedom. Perhaps the question isn't whether time follows a script, but who inscribed it and how flexible that script might be. Even if patterns exist, perhaps they allow for improvisation, for surprising turns, for human creativity within universal structure. Many modern believers find middle ground here. They perceive God establishing broader patterns while leaving room for human choices. They believe time possesses direction without determining every detail. The future holds both certainty and surprise, divine promises that will arrive true through unpredictable human actions. What might we gain by taking Jubilees seriously, even if not literally? Perhaps a deeper sense of meaning in ordinary moments. Perhaps greater patience when life appears random or unfair. Perhaps hope that scattered occurrences will eventually reveal their purpose, like puzzle pieces forming a picture we couldn't perceive while positioning them. The book also challenges our modern attitude toward time. We treat time as a resource to use efficiently, a commodity to save or spend. Jubilees suggests time is neither a resource nor a commodity, but a revelation, each moment unveiling something about reality's authentic nature. This view transforms how we exist our days. Monday morning traffic isn't just wasted time, but part of a pattern with meaning. A child's birthday isn't just another year past, but a marker in universal time. Every sunset, every season, connects to rhythms established at creation. Whether we embrace Jubilees fully or hold it at a thoughtful distance, its vision reminds us of questions worth asking. Does history possess direction? Do patterns exist beyond what we create? Does time reveal something greater than itself? These questions matter not just for religious believers, but for everyone who seeks meaning in life's flow. They touch our deepest human concerns, where we arrived from, where we're going, and whether our brief lives connect to something lasting. Perhaps that's why Jubilees survived when so many ancient manuscripts disappeared. Its vision speaks to something we continue to hunger for, assurance that our days matter, that time leads somewhere, that behind the world's chaos lies meaning. The sun will ascend tomorrow, continuing the cycle Jubilees asserted was established at creation. As it does, perhaps we might pause to consider, what if this ancient book glimpsed something authentic about time's deeper nature? What if our days unfold not just by chance, but as part of a story inscribed in the stars? Maybe the authentic question isn't what Jubilees got incorrect, but what it got right.